In a moment of courage, a girl confesses her feelings to Makoto, pleading for him to go out with her. However, Makoto declines her request, explaining that his home circumstances make it impossible. Despite her hesitation and tears, he gives a final, brief apology and walks away. Sarah walks away, visibly upset after the rejection. Makoto turns to his teacher and thanks her, but the teacher is clearly annoyed. She tells him to stop calling her every time someone confesses to him, explaining that she doesn't want to get involved if the confession is just a prank. She looks at him with frustration, wondering why he distrusts people so deeply. Sensei warns Makoto that he cannot make friends with such a distrustful attitude, but he simply replies that he has no need for them. As he walks away, Makoto remembers his grade school days, when he was the class joker. He recalls the simple happiness he felt whenever his crush laughed at his antics. However, that carefree time shifted one day when a playful chase ended with the girl falling hard, leaving Makoto stunned. Yuri sits on the ground, crying and bleeding from the fall. The surrounding children panic, with one shouting that they saw Makoto push her. Though a worried Makoto offers to get band-aids from his bag to help, the situation quickly turns hostile as he is called a jerk and demanded to apologize, causing him to run away in distress. His classmates surround him, harshly accusing him of running away without saying sorry. Makoto, flustered and overwhelmed, tries to defend himself, claiming he wasn't running. As he struggles with their mean words, the packet of band-aids he had intended to use for Yuri remains abandoned on the ground. The situation spirals out of control as more false accusations surface. From throwing rocks to destroying notebooks, every malicious rumor is accepted as truth. No matter how much he denies it, nobody believes him. Makoto is branded as the bad guy, left to suffer in silence while his classmates continue to badmouth him. With no one willing to believe his side of the story, Makoto felt completely abandoned by everyone around him. In his despair, he clung to the hope that at least he still had his family to rely on. Just as Makoto turns to his family for support, he is met with anger and betrayal. His mother and sister berate him, accusing him of lying to and hurting Shizukasan, leaving him stunned and completely isolated. Makoto desperately pleads with his mother to listen to him, but Mina is already preoccupied with a call from another parent, confirming the false accusations. Standing alone in a void of isolation, Makoto reflects on the crushing reality that no Onino, even his own family, trusts him. He concludes that if they will never believe him, there is no point in trying to explain himself anymore, and he decides to stop talking altogether. Time passes, and the scene shifts to Makoto's middle school years. Seeking refuge in solitude, he spends his days in the library, where he notices a classmate named Sato-san, who is always there, quietly immersed in her books. While in the library, Makoto notices a phone left on a table. He recognizes it belongs to Sato-san and returns it to her. Surprised and happy, Sato-san thanks him warmly for his kindness. Sato-san notices Makoto's frequent presence in the library and curiously asks him what kind of books he likes. Makoto is momentarily puzzled at the question, wondering to himself what it is that he actually likes. For a brief moment, Makoto was truly happy, letting his guard down because he believed he had finally found a friend in Sato-san. However, that peace was short-lived. A simple incident in the library led to a devastating misunderstanding, branding him as a criminal who tried to attack her. It was all just a misunderstanding, but the result remained the same. Makoto ended up alone once again. As he wonders why other girls are even trying to reach out to him, he spots Sira from afar. Sira courageously confesses her longtime feelings to Makoto, asking him to go out with her. Surprised and insecure, Makoto questions why she would do this given the terrible rumors surrounding him. However, Sira firmly tells him that she believes in him. To ease the pressure, she suggests they start by being friends and asks if he can meet her over the weekend. As Sira walks away, other students laugh in the background, mocking the situation and calling Kisaragi a genius for her audacity in approaching Makoto. Sira apologizes to Makoto, revealing that her confession was nothing more than a cruel punishment game. As others laugh at his expense, Makoto realizes he has been tricked once again. He deletes her contact from his phone, feeling his heart, which had barely begun to heal after the incident with Sato-san, completely break. Walking away from the school in the biting cold, Makoto finds a small comfort in his gloves. However, the warmth is only physical, as he reflects on the grim reality that the bad things in his life were far from over. Amidst the biting winter cold and his deep isolation, a girl named Nanako greets Makoto with a warm smile. As they talk during break time, Makoto is surprised by her kindness, while other classmates whisper in the background, warning Nanako to stay away from him for fear that he might trick or hurt her. Nanako openly defends Makoto, insisting he isn't the person the rumors claim he is. She later sends him a text inviting him to karaoke over the weekend, leaving Makoto feeling cautiously hopeful. But the moment is quickly soured by his classmates, who mock him for believing Nanako would actually spend time as emo engrosses him. Haunted by the mocking laughter of those around him, Makoto sinks into deep self-loathing, hating himself for falling for the same tricks repeatedly. He spends the remainder of his middle school years in complete isolation, until one day a girl named Miyazaki Shizuka unexpectedly calls out to him and asks to walk home together. Makoto is bewildered by Miyazaki Shizuka's sudden approach, recalling that she never spoke to him throughout middle school. He realizes with a sense of irony that all the girls who betrayed him have ended up at the same high school. Refusing to be fooled again, he tells himself to stay uninvolved and coldly brushes her off as he walks away, wanting only to go home. Shizuka mocks him, calling him gloomy and pointing out his lack of friends. Miyazaki Shizuka suddenly offers to be Makoto's friend, dismissing their past conflicts as water under the bridge and claiming she never believed the rumors about him. Makoto remains silent, but internally, he is shaken. He realizes that the version of school life Shizuka witnessed is completely different from the nightmare he actually lived through. Miyazaki Shizuka continues her plea, insisting that she believes in him and urging him to stop being so meek so they can go back to doing dumb things together like they used to. Overwhelmed and confused, Makoto can only wonder why she is suddenly choosing this moment to reach out to him. Makoto questions why Shizuka is suddenly acting this way. Shizuka tries to explain, apologizing for her past avoidance and claiming she was simply too scared and nervous to speak to him back then, but now that they are in high school, she has found the courage to change. Unmoved by her excuses, Makoto's expression turns cold as he recognizes the pattern. He bluntly tells her to stay away from him. Shocked by his coldness, Miyazaki Shizuka grabs Makoto's sleeve, unable to believe his rejection. She questions why he wants her to stay away, reminding him that he once liked her and pleading for him to stop acting so strange while apologizing for her past faults. Makoto coldly tells Miyazaki Shizuka to stop already, shutting down her attempts to reconcile. Overwhelmed by his rejection, Shizuka can only offer a sincere apology. With a cold and indifferent gaze, Makoto delivers a final, crushing blow, telling Miyazaki Shizuka that it is far too late to say she trusts him now. Before she can even process his words, he slams the door shut, leaving a stunned Shizuka desperately calling out his name as she reaches for the door. Makoto arrives home and is immediately greeted by his sister, Ari, who asks if he was with Shizuka. He coldly accuses her of eavesdropping and asks to go upstairs using formal language, prompting Ari to remind him that they are siblings. As he dismisses her and walks away, Ari laments how different he has become from the bright and happy person he once was, while their mother welcomes him back. Mina tells Makoto to get ready and suggests they go out to celebrate his first day of school. Makoto dismisses the idea with a cold, formal tone, leaving Mina disappointed, as she urges him to stop sulking and reminds him that they are a family. Makoto internally questions the very emotion of sulking. He reveals that since the incident with Miyazaki-san, family outings have become too awkward, leading him to spend his time alone studying and reading. Makoto cuts the conversation short with a cold, formal apology, leaving Mina and Ari standing in the hallway. Once alone in his room, he checks his device and notices 2 new messages. He reflects on how route novels allows him to drown in his own world, admitting it is the only good hobby he has left since he feels he has nothing else. Reading a passionate review for his isekai reincarnation novel, he whispers a quiet thanks to himself. While browsing his messages, Makoto is stunned to find a notification from the site management. A publishing company has noticed his work and wants to contact him for publication. Although he is genuinely happy to be recognized, he quickly becomes hesitant, fearing that such attention would only make his life more troublesome. Ultimately, he decides to ignore the offer and pretend he never saw it. Still affected by the publishing email, Makoto finds himself incredibly sleepy during lunch, planning to take a nap as soon as he finishes eating. While sitting in the classroom, his attention is drawn to Shimizukasan, a girl who is eating and reading alone. He realizes that much like himself, she is isolated and burdened by negative rumors. Shimizukasan approaches Makoto, asking if she can join him for lunch. Although he recognizes that she is an outcast just like him, Makoto remains guarded, viewing her friendliness as a landmine similar to Nanako's behavior. He coldly tries to dismiss her, claiming he has a book to read, which only makes Shimizuka-san more persistent in her attempt to talk to him. Shimizuka-san doesn't let Makoto escape so easily. She tells him that she wants to see the book once he's finished reading it. With a slight huff, she hands him a book, to which Makoto responds with a formal thank you. Nanako laughs, commenting on how surprising it is that Makoto is talking to Shimizuka-san, noting that nobody wants to be friends with her because of the rumors. As Shimizuka-san walks away, Makoto watches the scene with a cold gaze. He reflects on how people judge others without knowing the truth, deciding that he wants nothing to do with people like her. Shimizuka-san quietly contemplates the fact that this is her first time actually talking to someone. Watching her, Makoto reflects on the situation, admitting to himself that Nanako is right. If he were a normal person, he would be the first one to question why someone like her is trying to get involved with others. A memory surfaces of a time when Shimizukasan kindly offered to help Makoto carry a heavy load, though he coldly declined, fearing his mother's reaction force. Back in the present, Makoto stares blankly, wondering why he ever attempted to socialize with her in the first place, concluding that it simply wasn't like him. The scene shifts to the memory, showing Shimizukasan standing in a quiet residential street, holding her belongings as Makoto observes her. Shimizuka-san walks past with a faint, mysterious smile, holding her phone. Nearby, a classmate whispers in shock, labeling her as a delinquent, while Makoto silently observes the prejudice directed toward her. Sarah looks puzzled, noting a strange smile and questioning if the uniform she sees is theirs. Beside her, Shimizuka-san reacts with a cold, piercing gaze. As they walk together, Makoto keeps a close eye on Shimizuka-san, wondering if he just saw her squinting. Sarah reflects on the rumors surrounding Shimizuka-san, noting that she is the mean-looking delinquent everyone at school talks about, though she finds the very notion of a delinquent in this day and age to be weird. Sarah addresses Makoto, asking him why the two of them stopped being close to each other. Makoto, however, appears completely oblivious, questioning if she even said something. Sarah continues her explanation, admitting that her childhood desire to bully Makoto stemmed from jealousy, as he always spent his time playing with Shizukasan instead of her. Sarah continues her lecture, accusing Makoto of believing rumors and lying to their mother about something terrible. She questions if he ever considered how his actions would hurt others, before playfully shifting the blame onto him for ignoring her. Sarah suddenly exclaims that she was wrong about the bad rumors, declaring that her cool Onikon would never do such a thing. Makoto, looking exhausted, tells her to calm down and promises that he won't make that mistake again. Sarah beams with pride, declaring that she was the only one who truly believed in him, while Makoto simply closes his eyes, seemingly overwhelmed by her sudden change in attitude. Makoto cuts through Sarah's enthusiasm, coldly asking her to stop calling him Oni-chan. He bluntly reminds her that the past cannot be undone or simply disappear, leaving Sarah looking confused. Confused by his sudden coldness, Sarah asks if she should call him Makokan instead. However, Makoto doesn't even give her an answer, simply stating that his food is melting and walking away. Sarah is left standing there, bewildered and still clinging to the title of Oni-chan. The tension of the encounter fades into a heavy silence as Makoto returns to his computer, his hands resting on the keyboard. Still shaken by his conversation with Haruka, Makoto tries to find solace in his writing. He then receives a supportive message from Pomeco, who tells him that his novel has been her salvation. Alone at his computer, Makoto looks on with a calm expression. He thinks of Pomeco-san, thanking her for the frequent messages she has been sending him, which make him feel better in a world where he rarely hears from his readers. Having finished typing, Makoto mutters, okay to himself and stretches his arms behind his head, finally taking a moment to relax. Makoto announces his departure as he steps out of the house. While on his way, he checks his phone, only to find that there are still no new messages. As Makoto arrives at school, he catches sight of Miyazaki Shizuka and Sira. The two girls notice him as well, leading to a brief, silent moment of recognition. As Makoto attempts to walk past them, Miyazaki Shizuka suddenly calls out to him, urging him to wait. Beside her, Sira and another male student watch the interaction with surprised expressions. Miyazaki Shizuka desperately tells Makoto that she just wants to see him face-to-face and talk. However, she is interrupted by Kurosawa Momo, Shizuka's best friend, who steps in to introduce herself to Makoto. Sira looks at Makoto with a confused expression, asking what he is smiling about. Makoto, maintaining a slight smirk, remarks that his attempt didn't trick her and that she was actually being serious. With a tearful and earnest expression, Miyazaki Shizuka tells Makoto that she didn't lie to him back then. She acknowledges that many things happened in the past, but asks if they can finally move on, simply wanting to see a movie with him to help him feel better. Kurosawa Momo suddenly pulls Miyazaki Shizuka into a tight hug, gushing over how cute and good she is. Meanwhile, Zora watches the scene, adding a brief comment. Kurosawa Momo suddenly turns her aggression toward Makoto, shouting at him for his attitude and bringing up the accusations from his past. She finds it absurd that Shizuka could actually like someone like him, calling the whole situation insane. While Shizuka tries to calm Momo down, Makoto simply looks on with a blank expression, questioning whether Shizuka's actions are born from genuine kindness or something else. Kurosawa Momo continues her berating, commenting that Makoto doesn't look so good and calling Shizuka a sweetie in comparison to him. Amidst the noise, Makoto's internal thoughts drift, noting that despite her current actions, Miyazaki never actually tried to fix the distrust he harbors. Deciding that a softer approach won't work, Makoto concludes that he must use a harsher truth to get through to her. He coldly tells Kurosawa Momo to get out of his way, leaving her completely shocked by his sudden intensity. Startled by the atmosphere, Sura tries to appeal to Kurosawa Momo, reminding her that they were friends. However, Momo is not in the mood, questioning how Sura can even call them friends given the situation. Despite the tension, Sura continues to plead, eventually suggesting that Makoto, Momo, and herself should all go out together next time. Kurosawa Momo screams with an angry, pained expression, declaring that she believed in him. Beside her, Makoto remains detached, his eyes showing no sign of remorse or emotion. Makoto coldly cuts Kurosawa Momo off, silencing her mid-sentence just as she begins to call him an asshole. He tells her bluntly that he needs her to be quiet. Makoto calls out to Miyazaki and Kurosawa, catching both of them off guard as he prepares to speak. Makoto confronts the two girls, firing a series of cold, rhetorical questions about baseless slander, false accusations, and betrayal by loved ones. He sharply tells them to stop talking as if they know everything when they are actually completely clueless. After confronting them with the harsh reality of his pain, Makoto simply states that all he wants is to be spared from further trouble. With a cold finality, he asks Miyazaki Shizuka and Kurosawa Momo to take their leave. Makoto delivers a final crushing blow, stating that it is far too late to undo what has been done. Miyazaki Shizuka is left emotionally broken and in tears, while Kurosawa Momo calls out to her in distress. Kurosawa Momo lets out a small, frustrated huff, unable to find a proper response to Makoto's coldness. The tension eventually fades as the scene shifts, showing Makoto back in his usual state of isolation, quietly reading a book alone in the classroom, completely detached from everyone else. Kurosawa Momo steals a quick glance at Makoto, her expression shifting to one of confusion and fluster as she watches him remain isolated in the classroom. Makoto observes Kurosawa Momo from afar. As she drinks from a bottle and scrolls through her phone, he notes her gestures, guessing that she must be reading a web novel and is deeply invested in the current chapter. Kurosawa Momo is completely absorbed in her phone, her face flushing with excitement as she reads. Right, yeah, she exclaims, seemingly lost in the story, while Makoto continues to watch her from the side. Makoto watches as Kurosawa Momo types with an intense speed, almost like a madman. Curious, he checks his own phone, but finds no new messages, leaving him slightly puzzled. Makoto stares at his phone with a puzzled expression. He wonders why it's so quiet, mentioning to himself that he had been expecting some feedback after updating a new part of his work yesterday. A message finally arrives from Pomeco, expressing how much she loved the new part of his story, and how it cheered her up. Makoto lets out a sigh of relief, genuinely glad that she enjoyed it. He briefly worries if replying too quickly would make it obvious that he was waiting for her, but ultimately decides to send a thank you note and mention his plan to write another chapter. Just as Makoto finishes sending his reply, Kurosawa Momo is caught completely off guard. She stares at him with wide, stunned eyes, unable to believe the message she just received on her phone. A notification pings on Makoto's phone. He glances over at Kurosawa Momo, who is staring at her own screen in complete shock. Confused by her intense reaction, Makoto wonders what on earth is happening. Makoto receives another notification from Pomeco, but the subject "Linny if it's possibly" leaves him more confused. As he wonders what she could possibly mean, Kurosawa Momo is seen looking completely overwhelmed and flustered. In her state of utter confusion and panic, Kurosawa Momo loses her grip, and her phone slips from her hand, clattering onto the classroom floor. Looking down at the phone on the floor, Makoto notices a small, cute Pomeranian mascot on the back of the case, leaving him curious. Staring at the phone, Makoto's mind races as he whispers the word "poem," starting to piece together a shocking realization. Beside him, Kurosawa Momo is completely overwhelmed, her face flushed with embarrassment. Makoto stares intently, the realization about Pomeco sinking in. As the tension lingers, the story transitions into Chapter 3. Nyanta and Pomeco. Makoto wonders if Pomeco got her name from the Pomeranian. Noting that the mascot on the phone case was indeed a Pomeranian, or at least looked like one, Makoto covers his face, feeling overwhelmed by his own deductions. He tells himself that it's not certain that the girl is Pomeco, and tries to force himself to stop thinking and regain his composure. As Makoto tries to clear his head, Kurosawa Momo looks at him with a deep blush on her cheeks. In a soft, hesitant voice, she whispers the name Nyanta. Makoto freezes, his eyes widening in shock. He stares at Kurosawa Momo, completely caught off guard by the name she just whispered. Makoto is completely thrown off balance. He feels his heart pounding painfully in his chest and can't stop sweating, deeply confused by the sudden, intense emotion surging through him. The next morning, Makoto places his phone on the desk with a soft thud. As a greeting of morning echoes, he tells himself to relax, trying to dismiss his lingering feelings by reminding himself that he and Shimizukasan aren't even friends. Sensei announces that homeroom is starting. Makoto tries to convince himself that there is nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, Shimizukasan looks on with a troubled expression, deciding that she will simply erase the message and forget everything. The scene shows the exterior of the school building before cutting to a close-up of Makoto. He silently resolves to delete the message as soon as homeroom ends. Makoto keeps putting it off. First, he tells himself he'll delete the message once class ends, and then again after he finishes his lunch. Eventually, he just stares at his phone in silence. Despite his repeated attempts to convince himself to let go, Makoto finds that he simply cannot bring himself to delete her message. As Sensei announces the start of the final homeroom, Makoto feels completely drained by the morning's events, wishing he could just go home. He notices that even holding his phone makes him feel strangely sick, yet he continues to rationalize his procrastination, deciding that he doesn't need to delete the message right this moment. As the final homeroom proceeds, Shimizukasan finds herself observing Shinozuka-san. She notices a heavy pressuring aura emanating from her, realizing that Shinozuka-san might be intentionally causing fear in others to maintain her distance. While Sensei begins discussing the arrangements for making groups for the school trip, Makoto remains lost in his own thoughts. He sternly tells himself to stop thinking about Shinozuka-san, reaffirming his resolve to stay distant and avoid getting involved with people. Sensei tells the class to start talking to their friends to form groups for the upcoming trip. For Makoto, this is a trigger. He reflects on how he was always alone and finds the idea of groups annoying, admitting that trying to remember those times makes him feel sick again. With the final homeroom over, Makoto doesn't waste a second, thinking only of getting home as quickly as possible. As he walks away, Shinozuka-san catches sight of him, her expression turning into one of surprise and a deep blush, leaving her completely speechless. Makoto gives a brief, polite farewell, telling Shimizuka-san that he'll be leaving ahead of her. As he walks away, Shimizuka-san is left standing there, looking flustered and speechless. Left alone and flustered after Makoto's exit, Shimizuka-san curses under her breath and kicks a chair in frustration. As she prepares to leave, she notices Miyazaki Shizuka watching her and snaps, shouting at her to stop trying to be friends. Shimizuka-san turns her attention back to Miyazaki Shizuka, questioning if she is friends with Shinozuka-san and stating that she, Miyu, doesn't like her. Makoto watches in silence, his mind drifting back to the past. He recognizes Seitu Miyu, noting that although she completely redid her look for her high school debut, she is the same girl from the library incident. Makoto remembers the plain girl Seitu used to be. In his memory, she tells him that while she was never able to talk to boys, he was special to her, and she would never forget the fun they had together in the library. Seitu is overwhelmed with emotion, blushing deeply as she wonders if what she felt was her first love. She then turns to Makoto, softly asking if it's sad to be alone, and acknowledging that she knows everything that happened afterward. The flashback concludes, and Makoto is brought back to the present. A Kurosawa Momo looks at him, asking if he noticed that his sister, Miyazaki-san, Nanako-chan and Kisaragi-san are also there. Makoto reflects on his coldness, realizing he never recognized their faces because he had completely erased them from his memories. Beside him, Kurosawa Momo gives a warm, blushing smile, admitting that it was partly her fault too, and asking if they could be friends once again. Kurosawa Momo dismisses any concerns, confidently declaring that she has learned everything from romance games. She believes that by learning from her mistakes and doing her best, she can make everything right again. Watching her, Makoto realizes that she is just as delusional as his sister and childhood friend, imagining things are fine in her own head. Seitu suddenly remembers something and pulls out a pair of glasses. With a bright, playful smile, she puts them on and asks Makoto if she looks good, declaring it a nostalgia bomb to remind him of her old self. Seitu asks if he is getting excited seeing her in her glasses again. Internally, Makoto fights the urge to remember, desperately telling himself that he is empty and must not be swayed by emotion, even as he clutches his chest in agitation. Makoto reflexively takes a photo of Seitu with his phone. Startled and flattered, Seitu poses with a bright smile, teasingly reminding him to make sure he uses a filter for the picture. Makoto looks down at his phone to find a message from Pomeco. She tells him that, despite everything that has happened, she is looking forward to the new chapter of his life and asks to send him messages of support, even if he doesn't respond. Staring at the screen, Makoto is stunned, admitting to himself that he thought she would never reach out to him again. Seitu reacts with sudden excitement when she notices the photo on Makoto's phone. Makoto, however, remains stoic, observing that their contrasting personalities are perfectly reflected in this interaction. Makoto sinks into his thoughts, pondering the strange sensation in his chest. He realizes that he might actually be feeling happy. Pomeco's message, expressing her anticipation for his novel as a reader, feels pure and free of the betrayal he has experienced in the past. He thinks to himself that the only real betrayal now would be if he failed to complete his work. Makoto wonders when the day will finally come. but he is now filled with a newfound determination. He decides to head home right away to start writing his novel. While he is still feeling this surge of happiness and motivation, just as Makoto is heading home to write, he is stopped by Miyazaki Shizuka. She asks if he has a minute to talk, but Makoto coldly brushes her off, claiming he is meeting a friend and has no time for her. Upon arriving home, Makoto is greeted by the exuberant Ari. She jumps with joy, excitedly begging her favorite big brother to go shopping with her. Mina tells Makoto to get ready, insisting that they should go shopping together as a family and urging him to stop dwelling on the past. Makoto, however, is far from convinced, bitterly remembering how his mother had ignored him during his middle school graduation. To spend time with Ari, he wonders what she is even talking about. Mina tries to bridge the gap by mentioning Makoto's friends and suggesting he invite them along. But Makoto dismisses her coldly, calling it a waste of money. As he turns away, he reflects on the fact that human personalities don't change easily, noting that his mother is still the same person she was years ago. He firmly tells her that he cannot suddenly start acting like a family again, as it would only cause more problems. Eri tries once more to convince Makoto to join them for a meal, but she can't help but tease him, questioning if his supposed friend is actually just imaginary. Eri continues her attempts to coax Makoto, childishly asking to hold his hand and walk with him. However, Makoto responds with a cold, dismissive comment about the reliability of words, leaving Eri stunned, defeated, and confused. Eri eventually gives up and tells him she'll be leaving. Makoto walks through the city, reflecting on how everyone, including Haruka, is likely crowding the new mall by the station. Seeking solitude, he decides to head toward an old, rundown store, confident that he won't encounter any acquaintances there. Relieved to find the food court completely empty, Makoto decides it is the perfect place to write his novel without any distractions. However, his piece is suddenly interrupted, leaving him confused. Just as Makoto finds a quiet spot, he spots a familiar face. Shimizukasan is sitting there, smiling softly to herself while looking at her phone. Surprised by her presence in such an unexpected place, Makoto can't help but wonder why she is here. Shimizukasan suddenly notices Makoto and is startled, however. Her surprise quickly turns into a shy blush and a soft giggle as she looks at him. Makoto simply stares back with a bewildered expression, unsure of how to react. Seemingly lost in her own world, Shimizukasan hums a light tune, looking completely relaxed and content as she uses her tablet. Shimizukasan wears a shy, blushing expression. Makoto stares at her, completely bewildered by her reaction. Makoto looks at his phone, navigating to Pomeco's page. He stares at the screen, noticing a post that reads, "Novelization coming." Staring at his phone, Makoto is stunned by the discovery. He realizes that Pomeco is a novelist and that her work is actually getting published. Even though she hadn't updated her page for a year, it finally clicks for him. The author is Pomeco. As Makoto browses through Pomeco's page, he comes across a reader's comment. The message expresses deep empathy for the protagonist, Mike Saburo, and the difficulty of trusting others, a sentiment that resonates strongly with Makoto's own life. Makoto approaches the counter and orders 2 orange juices. As the staff member confirms the order, he remains quiet, seemingly preoccupied with his thoughts. Makoto returns to the table, but Shimizuka-san immediately puts up a wall, telling him to get lost if he's trying to flirt, however. She is quickly caught off guard by his sudden presence, blushing in surprise as she asks when he even got there. Still blushing and flustered, Shimizuka-san tries to gather her courage to suggest that perhaps the two of them could get along. However, Makoto cuts her off with a cold, indifferent expression, bluntly telling her that he doesn't feel like being friends with her either. Shimizuka-san is stunned by Makoto's sudden shift in attitude, questioning what happened to his polite tone. She defensively argues that she has her own rumors to deal with, though she claims they aren't as bad as his. Ultimately, she tells him to just leave her alone. Makoto looks on with a blank, cold expression. He acknowledges the rumors surrounding him but dismisses them entirely, questioning if his reputation has really gotten that bad, and stating that he simply doesn't care, as no one truly knows if such rumors are true anyway. Irritated by Makoto's cold attitude, Shimizuka-san lashes out, telling him not to bother her and claiming she doesn't care anymore. She declares her desire to distance herself from everyone, while a caption notes that the rumors about her are all pretty bad. The rumors surrounding Shimizukasan are far from harmless, painting her as a delinquent involved in violence, extortion, and even dating older men. Another rumor surfaces, accusing Shimizuka-san of sneaking around at night, further painting her in a negative light. Shimizuka-san offers Makoto a juice with a slight pout. Makoto, holding his drink, simply remarks that rumors are just dumb. Suddenly overwhelmed, Shimizuka-san pushes the juice away and lashes out at Makoto. With a distressed expression, she screams that she doesn't want to be deceived anymore, begging him to stop showing her fake kindness and just leave her alone. Amidst the emotional tension, a drink is accidentally knocked over, splashing across Shimizukasan's clothes. Startled by the sudden mishap, Makoto hurriedly apologizes as he notices the spill on her clothing. Makoto closes his eyes and takes the blame, admitting that he was wrong to offer her the juice out of nowhere. Flustered by his sudden admission, Shimizukasan stammers, trying to maintain that he is the one at fault. Makoto pauses for a moment, thinking. He then looks at the other person and asks bluntly, "So, you're not planning on having a friendly chat with me. So what do you want?" After a brief silence, he simply says, "Okay," with his eyes closed and a detached tone. Makoto makes his position clear. He tells Shimizukasan that he doesn't want to be friends with her either, admitting that he'd rather not believe in her at all than suffer the pain of betrayal once again. Shimizuka-san fires back with a cold expression, stating that she has no interest in being friends with him either, and tells him to get out of her face. Just as the tension reaches its peak, Makoto asks a surprising question, wondering why Pomeco-san stopped writing. Shimizuka-san is instantly thrown off balance, blushing in shock as she demands to know how he could possibly know that. Completely rattled, Shimizuka-san lashes out, convinced that Makoto must have heard about her writing from someone else. Makoto, however, remains entirely indifferent, sipping his drink and coldly reassuring her that she doesn't need to worry, as he has no desire to be her friend. Shimizukasan continues her loud outburst, refusing to accept his excuse. She brings up Nanta and shouts her frustration, complaining that he always puts too many dead people in his stories. Makoto remains expressionless, listening as Shimizuka-san continues to vent her frustrations, claiming that his writing hurts her deeply, and demanding that he show more care for the characters he creates. Shimizuka-san decides to let Makoto slide, citing a cute heroine as the reason for her sudden leniency. However, she is caught off guard when Makoto asks if he can read her works. Admitting that he hasn't read any of them yet, Makoto takes a look at Shimizukasan's writing, only to discover that she writes romance. As he reads about a sudden breakup, a mortified Shimizukasan panics and tries to get her phone back. She shouts at him to stop reading and mocks him in return, reminding him that his own stories always start with sudden deaths. A heavy silence falls between the two. Makoto looks down at the phone, appearing slightly flustered and speechless, while Shimizuka-san watches him with a triumphant smug smile, clearly enjoying his discomfort. The silence lingers between them as they sit opposite each other, neither making a move to break the tension following their argument. The tense standoff is broken when a loud grumble echoes from Shimizukasan's stomach, leaving her looking flustered and annoyed. Flustered by her stomach's betrayal, Shimizuka-san loudly admits that she didn't have lunch. As he watches her, Makoto finds himself reflecting on their conversation, realizing that Shimizuka-san is surprisingly knowledgeable. He then wonders to himself when the last time was that he had talked this much with another person. Makoto thinks to himself that he should eat and leave, but then he turns to Shimizuka-san and asks, "You don't want to go home, Pomeco-san?" Shimizuka-san looks back at him, appearing confused by the question. Shimizuka-san admits that she doesn't get along very well with her family. Hearing this, Makoto starts to agree, almost calling them annoying and untrustworthy before catching himself. A brief mental image of Mina and Ari flashes in his mind, reminding him of the headache they cause him. A cheerful, long-haired woman suddenly appears with a bright smile and open arms, energetically calling out to Anri. She happily announces that her big sister has arrived to take her home. Makoto watches with a neutral expression as Shimizuka-san blushes intensely, clearly mortified by her sister's loud and affectionate entrance. The older sister notices Makoto and gives him a friendly greeting, asking if he is Anri's friend. She then clings tightly to Shimizuka-san, insisting that she is coming home with her, while a flustered Shimizuka-san desperately tells her to stop. Shimizuka-san screams in embarrassment, insisting that she and Makoto are not friends. Makoto simply echoes her sentiment with a blank expression, leaving the older sister completely stunned. The older sister cheerfully introduces herself as Psycho, completely oblivious to Shimizuka-san's annoyed expression. Internally is simply delighted to see her sister spending time with someone her own age. Makoto awkwardly introduces himself as Shimizuka-san's classmate. Sateko is immediately smitten, calling him cute and comparing his appearance to Tetsuruken, a popular anime protagonist that Anri was fond of. Makoto can only react with a deadpan expression to her overwhelming enthusiasm. As she gets ready to leave, Shimizuka-san turns to Makoto to say goodbye. However, she quickly adds a warning, telling him not to get the wrong idea and firmly insisting that they are not becoming friends. Makoto responds with a calm indifference, agreeing that he has no intention of being friends with Shimizuka-san. Seiko, however, seems disappointed and suggests they stay and chat a bit more since she is tired from work. This only increases Shimizuka-san's embarrassment, leading her to loudly tell her sister to shut it as she hurriedly makes her exit. Sako is left stunned as Makoto and Shimizuka-san Both shout out simultaneously, their voices overlapping in the air. Sako is puzzled by the name Nyanta, but her expression quickly shifts to one of absolute shock. She realizes that Makoto might actually be Nyanta Sensei, the author of Mike Terrace Grand Isekai Adventure, and urgently demands that he confirm it. Seko turns to Anri with intense excitement, demanding confirmation of her theory. A flustered Shimizuka-san desperately denies ever saying the name. But Seko isn't convinced, she insists. She heard it loud and clear, reasoning that Makoto must be the author, since is the only one who can handle Anri's clumsy way of speaking. Now fully convinced, the older sister leans in close to Makoto, demanding to know why he hasn't been responding to her messages. She excitedly pressures him to do his best and arrange an editor meeting, leaving Makoto utterly bewildered and confused. The older sister doubles down on her conviction, reminding Makoto that she sent him revisions for serialization a few days ago. Completely thrown off, Makoto can only stare in disbelief, wondering what on earth she is talking about. Shimizuka-san loudly insists that she and Makoto are not friends, but the older sister isn't buying it. Complaining that he should have been honest about their relationship, she further scolds him for ignoring her messages, explaining that she was worried and is now angry. As they move through the city streets, she tells him that whether he accepts it or not, he still needs time to think. Noting that it has gotten late, the older sister suggests they talk about the serialization another time, mentioning that they live quite close to the area. While the older sister is lost in a daydream about the destiny of serialization, Shimizuka-san can only watch her sister's erratic behavior with confusion. Observing the scene, Makoto reflects on how completely different the two sisters are from one another. Watching them, Makoto admits to himself that he doesn't know much about Shimizuka-san. He wonders if her current behavior is perhaps a result of Seiko's calm and bright attitude. Suddenly, Makoto snaps out of his curiosity, questioning why he is even thinking about Shimizuka-san at this moment. The older sister points out that Shimizuka-san's sister is an editor. This realization brings Makoto a sense of relief, as he is glad that Shimizuka-san didn't use her family connections to pull strings for him. While the older sister expresses surprise that Shimizuka-san is in charge of him, Shimizuka-san grumbles internally, annoyed that she was actually the first one to appreciate his work. Shimizuka-san suddenly speaks up, calling out to Makoto. She urgently clarifies that his work is actually being published by a company different from her sister's. Shimizuka-san insists that she didn't use any of her connections to get Makoto serialized. She admits that she read his work and believes it was legitimately good enough on its own. Suddenly overwhelmed by her own honesty, she blushes deeply and exclaims that it's embarrassing, leaving Makoto looking on in confusion. Still flustered and grumbling to herself, Shimizuka-san struggles to find the right words. Eventually, she manages to softly thank Makoto, while he simply watches her with a neutral look. The older sister cheerfully remarks that Makoto and Shimizuka-san are good friends. However, Shimizuka-san quickly disagrees, reminding her sister of her past and her lack of belief in such friendships. Meanwhile, Makoto remains silent, internally doubting if he and Shimizuka-san can truly be considered friends. Shimizuka-san notices Makoto's sudden silence and looks at him with a confused expression, asking what's up. Beside them, the city lights flicker under the night sky. From a distance, Miyazaki Shizuka and Kurosawa Momo watch in disbelief as they spot Makoto walking with Shimizuka-san. Surprised by the sight, they wonder why Makoto is spending time with another girl. Makoto remains unaware of the girls behind him, but Kurosawa Momo can no longer stay silent and shouts out for him to wait. Desperate, Kurosawa Momo shouts for Makoto to stop and listen, pleading that they only want to apologize to him. However, Makoto, walking beside Shimizuka-san, maintains a cold and distant expression, completely ignoring her. Miyazaki Shizuka and Kurosawa Momo are overcome with emotion, sobbing as they plead for Makoto to stop. But Makoto's expression remains frozen and cold. He questions the meaning of their apology, bluntly stating that simply saying sorry won't erase the things they did to him in the past. Feeling the heavy atmosphere of the confrontation, Shimizuka-san blushes nervously and grabs Makoto's arm, urging him to leave. Makoto lets out a small, dismissive scoff, his expression shifting to one of confusion as he asks if they are talking about a previous topic. Meanwhile, Miyazaki Shizuka and Kurosawa Momo are completely broken, sobbing uncontrollably as they are left behind. Makoto sighs, calling Shimizuka-san a meddlesome girl, though he apologizes for the delay and tells her they should just go. As he takes her arm to lead her away, Shimizuka-san is caught off guard, her face flushing deep red in surprise. Just as Makoto is leading Shimizuka-san away, Seiko-san suddenly appears. Beaming with excitement, she enthusiastically chimes in, though she has no idea what's actually going on, prompting a deadpan reaction from Makoto. Seiko-san continues her cheerful antics, complaining about unfairness and insisting on holding Shimizuka-san's hand. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, Shimizukasan blushes deeply and desperately tells her to leave her alone, claiming they aren't even friends. Makoto silently observes the chaotic scene. The chaotic energy of the teasing fades as the scene shifts to a quiet city street under the night sky. A soft voice echoes through the air, simply stating, "I guess so." The scene cuts to a heartbreaking moment where Miyazaki Shizuka and Kurosawa Momo are left in tears, with a cold declaration that they are no longer friends. In contrast, Makoto looks on with a detached, empty gaze, thinking to himself that the wounds of the past can never truly be erased, while Shimizukasan remains flustered by his side. Miyazaki Shizuka and Kurosawa Momo are completely broken, their faces drenched in tears as they struggle to understand the distance between them and Makoto. In stark contrast, Makoto's expression is calm and resolute. He reflects on his ability to finally bury the wounds of his past and softly expresses his gratitude to Pomeco-san. Eri peeks through the curtains, watching Makoto walk away with Shimizuka-san and another girl. She is stunned, realizing that her brother actually has friends, something she previously thought was just a bluff. The scene transitions to the school building. In a quiet moment, Makoto looks at his phone with a soft, grateful expression, thinking of Pomeco and the supportive messages she sends him every single morning. A few days pass. At school, Makoto remains as distant as ever, not exchanging a single word with Shinozuka-san. He reflects on his connection with Pomeco, acknowledging that they are nothing more than an author and a reader. As Pomeco sends him messages regarding his newly released novel, Makoto feels that this simple, bounded relationship is enough for him. Back in the classroom, Sensei announces that today is the day the classmates will be forming their groups for the trip she mentioned a few days prior. Makoto and his classmates listen on, awaiting the instructions. The classroom erupts into a buzz of activity as classmates stand up and gather to form their groups. Amidst the commotion, Makoto sits alone at his desk, leaning his head on his hand with a look of boredom. He thinks to himself that the process of forming groups is too tedious and that he would likely be left out anyway, while also thinking about Shinozuka-san. Makoto remains detached, convincing himself that he doesn't need anyone and can handle things on his own. Meanwhile, nearby, his classmates are callously discussing who they want to avoid, with some expressing disgust at the thought of being grouped with Shinozuka-san or Shinjo. Overwhelmed by the callousness of her peers, Shimizuka-san lets out a pained groan, leaning her weight onto the desk in distress. Shimizuka-san turns toward Makoto, calling out his name with a hesitant and questioning tone. Makoto looks back at her, completely puzzled by her sudden approach, as the surrounding classmates watch the scene unfold with amused and surprised expressions. Shimizuka-san bows her head deeply before Makoto, who looks on with a confused expression. Nearby, Sato-san watches the unusual interaction, clearly surprised that Shimizuka-san is approaching him. Determined to get the process over with so she can go home, Shimizuka-san suddenly steps forward. With a quick, decisive motion, she marks the group list on the board, leaving Makoto completely startled by her sudden boldness. Shimizuka-san is left in a state of total shock, her face flushing as she realizes the weight of her actions. She is visibly shaken, wondering why things are happening this way. Suddenly shifting from her flustered state, Shimizuka-san turns to the class with a fierce expression. She boldly declares that she and Makoto are now a group of two, demanding to know if anyone has a problem with it. Sensei announces that the group decisions are finalized. Shimizuka-san quickly asks for confirmation that two people from different classes can be paired together, which Sira dismisses as not being an issue. As the matter is settled, Makoto looks on in confusion, while Shimizuka-san leans back in her chair, feeling proud of her sudden boldness. Blushing and avoiding eye contact, Shimizuka-san defensively insists that her decision to partner with Makoto isn't because she wants to get close to him, but simply because she wants to get the process over with and go home. Makoto listens to Shimizuka-san's excuse with a blank expression. He gives a half-hearted response, simply saying, "Oh, okay," before closing his eyes and dismissing the conversation with a quiet whatever. The panels transition into a reflective mood, presenting the names Shinjo Makoto and Shinozuka Anri. It is admitted that they are not friends by any means, but a cute illustration of a dog accompanies the realization that they are instead Nyanta and Pomeco. Shimizuka-san is visibly flustered, loudly questioning why they have to be in the same group despite her own decision. She quickly justifies her bold action, arguing that it's easier this way than risking being paired with people she hates. Makoto, remaining calm and indifferent, simply admits that she has a point. Looking away with a pensive expression, Shimizuka-san tells Nyanta that he should be more direct with his words, while quietly admitting to herself that she lacks his straightforwardness. Makoto suggests that they stop talking about school for now, and Shimizuka-san agrees while sipping her drink. Internally, Makoto wonders how long it has been since he wasn't alone during an outdoor class. He then shifts the conversation, asking her about the progress of her latest chapter, and the possibility of getting it published. Shimizukasan mentions that she has finished the section of her work for tonight's upload, needing only a bit of polishing. Makoto reflects on the idea of her being published. However, Shimizuka-san admits her uncertainty. While honored that her hobby was recognized, she worries that being underage might cause trouble for her parents. Shimizuka-san tells Makoto to take his time to think things through. She reminds him that he will be meeting Wanachan the day after tomorrow, adding that while she may seem aloof, she is truly passionate about her work. Makoto remains silent, lost in his own thoughts. Shimizuka-san continues talking about Wanachan, revealing that despite her cuteness, she has never had a boyfriend. Makoto looks on, completely taken aback by this unexpected piece of information. Makoto teases Shimizuka-san, noting how much she seems to like her Wanachan. Completely flustered, Shimizuka-san frantically denies it, claiming that it's only because they are family. However, Makoto remains skeptical of her excuse. Shimizuka-san suddenly calls out to Makoto, questioning why he looks so gloomy. However, beneath her energetic exterior, she is plagued by doubts about her father, wondering if the man she hasn't seen in years would ever approve of her novel getting published. While at a ramen shop, the conversation shifts toward their writing. They brainstorm themes, suggesting an outdoor class or a battle, and agree on a limit of 500 words, leaving Makoto looking somewhat flustered. Makoto reflects that he and Shimizuka-san aren't exactly getting along, even as they start a writing challenge to have Seika-san rate their short stories, a competition Shimizuka-san usually does with Pomeco-san. Shimizuka-san becomes flustered and demands to see Makoto's work, eventually cheering that she won in terms of speed. Makoto dryly notes that speed isn't the point of the battle, but he agrees to show her his story on his phone. As Shimizuka-san looks at him with a soft, genuine smile, Makoto is caught off guard. He covers his mouth in surprise, wondering if he is actually smiling for the first time in a long while. Shimizuka-san breaks the quiet moment with a playful tease, asking Makoto if he's about to cry because her work is the best. Flustered and blushing, Makoto covers his mouth, unable to find the words to respond. With a soft, blushing expression and a look of genuine admiration, Makoto lets out a heartfelt compliment, admitting that Shimizuka-san really is amazing. Shizuka-san is visibly moved, her eyes sparkling with emotion. She blushes and gives a soft, happy smile, replying gently, "If you say so." The next morning, Makoto prepares to leave his house. Ari greets him, noting that he is heading out early once again. As he turns to go, Ari senses something different about him and asks if something is wrong. But Makoto remains silent as he opens the door and departs. As he walks away, Makoto is plagued by memories of his mother's voice from the past. He recalls her harsh accusations of violence and molesting, and her cold reminder that in their world, a rumor becomes the truth regardless of the facts. Recalling her demanding tone, Makoto admits to himself that it's not as if his mother is a bad person. She simply tried her best to appear perfect in the eyes of others. Makoto continues to dwell on the pain caused by his mother's words, which always seemed to corner him. He wonders how she would react if he told her about the publication of his novel, realizing she doesn't even know he's writing one. Haunted by a lack of trust, he can almost hear her skeptical voice, questioning why a mere high schooler would be selling a novel written as a hobby. Dismissing Ara's call, Makoto heads out the door. He decides to put his anxieties about his mother's reaction aside for now and think about them at school, reminding himself that he has a meeting with Seiko-san later tonight. Eri suddenly presses a kusamochi into Makoto's hand, startling him. As she loudly wishes him a safe trip, Makoto reflects on how unusual it is for her not to insist on going to school with him this time. Later at school, Makoto and Shimizuka-san find themselves in the staff room. After apologizing for calling them out, the teacher admits to being surprised that the two of them actually get along as friends. Sensei quickly retracts her previous comment, insisting that they aren't friends and that they've misunderstood her. She tells them not to mind the details, explaining that she isn't trying to warn them or tell them to stay low, but is simply fulfilling her role as their homeroom teacher. Sensei softens her tone, reminding them that despite her role as a teacher, she is an adult they can trust and rely on for guidance outside of their own families. Shimizuka-san asks for the point of Sensei's words. Sensei explains that the world, and by extension school, is full of irrationality. She tells them that they don't need a large circle of friends, having just a few, or even one, is enough, as long as they find someone they can truly trust. Makoto listens silently to her advice. Makoto bluntly tells Sensei that no matter who you trust, betrayal is inevitable. Shimizuka-san echoes his sentiment, coldly concluding that since they will only be backstabbed, they never needed friends to begin with. Sensei looks on with a nostalgic expression. Despite their cold outlook on trust, she softly wishes that they can one day find someone they trust so deeply that they wouldn't even mind being betrayed by them once or twice. Makoto and Shimizukasan look on with confused expressions. Struggling to process Sensei's strange words, Shimizukasan admits she doesn't quite understand what the teacher means by finding someone they wouldn't mind being betrayed by. Sensei abruptly cuts the conversation short, telling them they can go back now. However, noticing Shimizukasan's gaze, she becomes flustered and snaps at her, denying that she was looking back. Walking away from the staff room, Makoto and Shimizukasan wonder if Sensei was simply telling them not to skip their outdoor class, both remaining puzzled by her words. While Shimizukasan is lost in her own thoughts, Sira suddenly appears and calls out to her, causing Shimizuka-san to jump in surprise. Sira beams with excitement as she recognizes Makoto, telling him it's been a long time and that she's always wanted to talk to him. However, Makoto is completely bewildered, admitting he has no idea who she is. While Makoto wonders if this is some kind of prank, a shocked Sira exclaims that she is Kisara. Makoto stares at Sira, questioning if she is one of the girls who played a fake confession prank on him. He looks closely at her face, wondering if she ever looked like that before. But he cannot recall her at all. Makoto acknowledges her as Kisaragi-san, but coldly tells her hell be on his way. As he turns to leave, a panicked Sira calls out to him, confessing that the prank was actually a punishment game and that she only did it because she was afraid her friends would hate her. Desperate for forgiveness, Sira reveals the truth. She actually has genuine feelings for Makoto. She begs him to let her start over, hoping he can overlook her past mistakes while Shimizuka-san watches the scene in distress. Makoto coldly questions Sarah's request to start over, reminding her that she was one of those who laughed at him during the fake confession prank. Internally, he wonders why he hasn't just walked away as he normally would. As Sarah desperately pleads for a chance to apologize, Makoto feels an increasing sense of discomfort, not wanting to continue this conversation in front of Pomeco. Sira pushes her plea further, desperately asking Makoto to go out with her this weekend. Makoto bluntly tells her it's already too late, leaving Pomeco stunned by the sudden confession. As Sira clings to him, begging for forgiveness and claiming she was forced into the prank, Makoto looks on with indifference, realizing she is only seeking to justify herself without any real regard for his pain. Sira is completely broken after Makoto's blunt refusal to forgive her. As she stands there in despair, Makoto and Pomeco can only watch, the tension reaching a breaking point. That's it, the bridge between them is officially burnt. Sira lashes out, accusing Pomeco of getting in the way, and demanding to speak with Makoto. However, Pomeco remains unfazed, bluntly informing her that Makoto has no time for idling with her because he needs to plan an outdoor class with Pomeco instead. With a cold and stern expression, Pomeco tells Sarah to scram, leaving no room for further argument. Beside her, Makoto remains silent and distant, showing that he has no interest in Sarah's pleas. Pomeco takes the lead and tells Makoto to go, effectively pulling him away from the awkward confrontation. Startled but compliant, Makoto follows her as they leave the hallway. Sarah stands frozen in the middle of the hallway, her expression a mix of shock and sorrow. The silence of the corridor amplifies her loneliness as she is left behind, completely rejected. Walking away from the scene, Pomeco reflects on the encounter, concluding that Sira is a dangerous type of girl. Blushing and acting flustered, she teases Makoto, calling him wimpy and reminding him that he'll be late for his promise. Putting an end to the discussion, Makoto simply tells Pomeco that it's time to go. As they walk, Pomeco asks if Makoto wants her to hold his hand again. Makoto playfully declines, noting that she would likely just blush again, which leaves Pomeco completely flustered. Meanwhile, Makoto quietly reflects on the lingering warmth of her hand. The story transitions to Chapter 7. A serene image of Miyazaki Shizuka appears, smiling gently amidst falling cherry blossoms, while a caption teases a mysterious moment between her and Makoto on their final day of middle school. The scene shifts back to the last day of middle school, as Makoto walks away. Miyazaki Shizuka calls out his name, her expression filled with emotion. Miyazaki Shizuka cheerfully congratulates Makoto on their graduation, and asks if he'll be attending the class after party. Makoto calmly returns the congratulations to Miyazaki Shizuka. However, despite her hopeful expression, he tells her that he has to excuse himself. Makoto turns around and begins to walk away without looking back. Surprised by his sudden departure, Miyazaki Shizuka reaches out her hand, calling out to him in confusion, pleading for him to wait. Confused by Makoto's cold behavior, Miyazaki Shizuka wonders what is wrong with him. However, she tells herself that since they are going to the same high school, she can simply try talking to him again later. In front of a cafe, Miyazaki Shizuka tells Kurosawa Momo about a time she and Seta-san ran into Makoto. Shizuka admits she was surprised to find him in the company of Shimizukasan and another beautiful, a sentiment that Momo agrees with, noting that both girls are quite attractive. Kurosawa Momo continues the conversation, noting that the Yankee girl Makoto went home with is Shimizukasan. She dramatically laments her own lack of smooth skin compared to her, feeling incredibly jealous. Miyazaki Shizuka expresses her concern to Seita-san, worrying that any negative rumors surrounding Shimizuka-san might spill over to Makoto. Seita-san ponders for a moment before replying that while Shimizuka-san is rumored to be a delinquent, she doesn't actually know for sure. Seita-san adds that Shimizuka-san is always alone in the classroom, making it seem like she isn't friends with Makoto at all. This leaves Miyazaki Shizuka puzzled as she remembers the girl chatting merrily with him. Kurosawa Momo suddenly remembers that a girl named Kisaragi had been looking for Makoto in the past, though she hadn't given her a serious answer. This sparks a conversation among the other girls, who recall rumors of Kisaragi and Makoto once being on good terms. They describe Kisaragi as a princess type Simone who seems plain and quiet at first glance, but is actually very popular among the boys. Kurosawa Momo hums thoughtfully, trying to recall more details. She remembers that Nanako might have also had something going on with Makoto a while back, but she finds it difficult to accurately compare Nanako and Kisaragi. As Miyazaki Shizuka agrees that she doesn't want other girls interfering, Kurosawa Momo suddenly perks up. With great excitement, she exclaims that Makoto was really kind to her this morning. Kurosawa Momo excitedly exclaims that Makoto actually accepted her kusamochi, leaving the other girls confused. Meanwhile, Miyazaki Shizuka reflects on how Makoto's expression and aura no longer seem as scary as they once were, wondering if this positive change is thanks to Shimizuka-san. Miyazaki Shizuka turns the conversation toward their shared feelings for Makoto, asking Citizen and Kurosawa Momo if they still care for him. However, her expression is clouded with regret as she reminds them that they have all made a grave mistake. A heavy silence falls over the three of them. Citizen, Miyazaki Shizuka, and Kurosawa Momo all wear expressions of deep regret and sorrow, weighed down by the realization of their past mistakes and their lingering feelings for Makoto. The memory drifts back to grade school. Miyazaki Shizuka recalls a particular day when she was hurt and upset, but amidst her pain, she noticed something troubling. Makoto was being pinned as the bad guy. Shizuka reflects on her silence during that day, knowing that Makoto was innocent. She should have explained that she simply tripped, or that they were just playing around. But the sudden aggression of their classmates left her unable to speak up. Miyazaki Shizuka continues her reflection, acknowledging that for children, school is their entire world. She realizes that being condemned by everyone in that environment is what caused Makoto to become so gloomy. Deep down, Shizuka knew she had to stop the misunderstanding, but the fear of becoming the next target of the class hatred was too strong. Paralyzed by this fear, she chose to look away and run away from Makoto, leaving him to suffer alone. Miyazaki Shizuka had hoped that starting high school would give her a chance to do things over and fix her relationship with Makoto. However, she soon realized that life is never that easy. Miyazaki Shizuka continues to dwell on her guilt, admitting that ever since that day in grade school, she has consistently chosen to betray Makoto. She views this as a mistake born from her own weakness. Listening to her, Kurosawa Momo can only sigh in somber agreement, knowing the truth all along. Kurosawa Momo reacts with surprise, recalling the day she first heard about the incident. She remembers how the other children tormented Makoto, throwing pebbles and breaking his belongings because they believed he had hurt Shizuka, though she admits she never knew the actual truth at the time. A young Ari is visibly shaken, questioning if it's truly possible that her brother, Makoto, could have done something so bad. She recalls how Haruka always described him as kind and fun, making the sudden revelation feel terrifying and unbelievable. The other year continue to gossip, labeling Makoto as two-faced and suggesting he only acted kind in front of his family. They laugh at the idea of him being isolated, claiming it is his own fault, while Eri looks on in shock, haunted by the thought of him being alone. Eri returns home, her face clouded with the disturbing words she heard about Makoto. As she opens the door, she is greeted by a welcoming voice, asking Haruka how school was. Shocked by the news, Ari demands clarification as a classmate reveals the rumor that Makoto had hurt a girl. As the tension lingers, Makoto arrives home, calling out his return, only to be greeted by a loud shout of his name. Eri reflects on her childhood, admitting that she felt neglected because Makoto spent so much time with Shizuka. In a desperate attempt to get his attention, she troubled him and told on him to their mother. She looks back with regret, realizing how foolish she was to wait for the perfect moment to apologize, while Makoto only grew more miserable. Eri looks on with a heartbroken expression, realizing the weight of her past mistakes. She wishes she had been kinder to Makoto sooner, but now he sees her as a complete stranger, offering nothing but empty responses. Kurosawa Momo speaks up, admitting that she made a grave mistake. She asks the others if they remember the rumor about Makoto attacking her, beginning to uncover the lies that shattered his life. Miyazaki Shizuka asks if Momo is talking about the incident in the library, where Makoto supposedly assaulted her. Momo admits she had believed the rumor as well, but recalls the truth from their middle school graduation day. She reveals that during an earthquake, Makoto was actually trying to protect her from things falling off the shelves, contradicting the rumors that had spread. Momo admits that she couldn't wrap her head around the situation at first, questioning how Makoto could have been protecting her. Overwhelmed by the revelation, Shizuka apologizes for not speaking up back then and says goodbye as she walks away. Momo desperately calls out for her to wait. The scene shifts to a flashback of the library during a powerful earthquake. As the shelves shake, Makoto suddenly jumps towards Seita-san, an action that would later be twisted into the malicious rumor that he had assaulted her. In the midst of the chaos, Seita-san is left bewildered, questioning if Makoto really tried to assault her. However, the situation quickly spirals as students swarm around them, their voices filling the air with reproaches and condemnation toward Makoto. The classmates swarm around, their voices filled with disbelief and condemnation. Some rush to check on Seita-san, asking if she is hurt or if Makoto touched her inappropriately, while others express their deep disappointment, unable to believe that the kind-hearted Makoto could commit such an act during the chaos of an earthquake. As the chaos of the earthquake settles, classmates gather around Seita-san, who has lost her glasses. While some comment on how cute she looks, others express their disgust toward the alleged assault, promising to protect her from the person they believe committed such a terrible act. Reflecting on the past, Seita-san admits that she was shy and had no friends, making the sudden pampering from her classmates feel overwhelming and happy. Because of this, she failed to ask Makoto what he was actually trying to do, swayed by the reactions of the people around them. Seita-san reflects on how the incident unexpectedly changed her life for the better, bringing her new friends and a new sense of style. She admits that school became so enjoyable that she didn't even think about the assault anymore. Her classmates recall her immense popularity in the 9th grade, to which she simply notes that she rejected everyone who confessed to her. Seita-san admits that in her eyes, no one is as cool as Makoto. Though she couldn't initially explain why, she recalls that once the truth was revealed, the memories of the library returned to her, making her realize that she has developed romantic feelings for him. Seita-san remembers a moment when she desperately called out to Makoto, but he didn't even turn around to look at her. She had hoped for a chance to talk to him in high school, but she now realizes that the opportunity is gone. Looking back with deep regret, she finally understands the weight of what she did to him, labeling it as her great mistake. Overwhelmed by guilt, Seita-san admits that everything is her fault. Despite the distance and the damage she caused, she confesses that Makoto is still important to her. Sira and Kurosawa Momo sit in heavy silence. Both haunted by the same regret, they wish they had reached out and apologized to Makoto much sooner. But they now realize that no matter how much they want to make amends, there is no reason for him to believe in them anymore. Faced with the weight of their actions, they are left wondering what they can possibly do to fix the broken trust. Eri speaks of her deep desire to apologize to Makoto, mentioning that Miyu wants to do the same. However, she is filled with sadness, knowing that Makoto now refuses to even look their way. Miyazaki Shizuka believes that a simple apology isn't enough. They must first take actions that will bring back the kind version of Makoto. When Kurosawa Momo asks for clarification, Shizuka warns them not to contact him directly, determined to succeed. Both Kurosawa Momo and Ari vow to do their absolute best to reach him. Ari looks down with a heavy heart, admitting that Shizuka is right. She acknowledges the painful reality that they are the ones who hurt Makoto, a fact that cannot be undone. Overwhelmed by guilt, she believes they shouldn't even be allowed to go near him. Miyazaki Shizuka solemnly declares that words of regret mean nothing at this point, and that they don't even have the right to love Makoto. Ari takes this to heart, concluding that they are absolutely not allowed to enter her brother's personal space. Ari suddenly shifts from regret to an unexpected burst of enthusiasm. She declares that since the Yankee girl has managed to win Makoto's heart, they must support her all the way. Miyazaki, Shizuka, and Kurosawa Momo can only stare in disbelief, utterly confused by her sudden change in logic. Kurosawa Momo and Sira are left bewildered by Eris' sudden shift in attitude. As they solemnly reflect on the fact that they cannot undo the mistakes they've made, Eri enthusiastically agrees, declaring that she will also cheer for Shimizukasan. Acknowledging that Shimizukasan has managed to reach Makoto's heart, Miyazaki Shizuka, Kurosawa Momo, and Sira come to a final agreement. The three of them pledge to take action and support the relationship between Shimizukasan and Makoto in any way they possibly can. With their goal decided, Miyazaki Shizuka begins strategizing for the nearest upcoming event. She emphasizes the need to clear any obstacles, specifically mentioning that stopping Kisaragi and Nanako should be their top priority. Agreeing with the approach, the others prepare to dive into the specifics of their plan. A brief silence falls over the group before they share a small knowing laugh. Though their reasons for gathering were rooted in regret and pain, they find a strange sense of unity. With a symbolic fist bump, Miyazaki Shizuka, Kurosawa Momo, and Sira form a secret alliance, pledging to do their best together to support Makoto and Shimizukasan while keeping their plan a secret. This morning, Haruka gave her kusamochi. As she looks at the treat, she recalls how, when she was little, she pretended to enjoy eating kusamochi. Just for Haruka's sake, since Haruka hated it, she wonders why Haruka still remembers what she likes. Makoto recalls a time when he felt a strong drive to protect Ari whenever she called him her big brother. But as he looks at his current self, he realizes that those feelings are gone, and he no longer feels anything at all. Sarah wonders why Miyazaki Shizuka has started acting the way she did in the past, recalling how Miyazaki used to follow her everywhere when they were children. However, despite the familiarity of the situation, Sarah realizes that she now feels nothing in her heart. Sarah continues her reflections, this time thinking about Citizen. She recalls the comfort she once found in their shared time reading books, which allowed her to escape the memory of the incident. However, just as she did with Miyazaki, Sarah realizes that even when faced with Citizen's kindness, she no longer feels anything in her heart. Sarah admits that her current state is a result of her own inability to handle the world's ill will, feeling neither love nor hate for those around her. Similarly, Makoto is consumed by a void of trust, concluding that it is far too late for him and that he is completely broken. A smartphone is prepared to connect a call, with a voice announcing they will get Makoto's father on the line. As Makoto sits with the others, a dark-haired girl looks on, thinking to herself in surprise that his father actually agreed to the arranged call. As the call connects, the scene shifts to a quiet house. Noah speaks with a polite yet cautious tone, apologizing to her father for calling during his busy morning and asking if he can spare some time to talk. Noah continues the call, feeling a sense of relief. She tells her father about her achievement, that the novel she wrote is going to be published as a book, and is grateful that he is actually listening to her. Makoto's father continues the call, warning him about the dangers of publishing scams and offering to accompany him as a guardian for the contract negotiations. Since Makoto is still a minor, he softly admits his own faults and tells Makoto that there are people who truly acknowledge him. Overwhelmed, Makoto thanks him with deep gratitude, prompting his father to comment on his overly formal and polite manner of speaking. Makoto stands still, stunned by the warmth of the words coming through the phone. His father offers his congratulations, telling him to be proud of himself and that he is his pride and joy. Following the heartfelt conversation with his father, Makoto turns to Noah, calling her name with a nervous expression. Noah looks back at him, stating that she will ask him again. Noah looks at Makoto with a bright, determined smile. She tells him that she wants to publish his story as a book and share it with the world, stating that bringing smiles to people through books is her job. She then asks him directly if he would let her put his written story into paper. Makoto listens, appearing overwhelmed by the request. Noah stands there, fidgeting nervously as she awaits Makoto's decision. She tells herself that if Nanta's story is published as a book, she will give it her absolute best. Makoto watches her, observing her visible anxiety. Looking down with a conflicted yet determined expression, Makoto finally gives his answer. He asks Noah to publish the story, admitting that while it may be selfish and potentially cause trouble for his family, he still wants to move forward. Noah becomes intensely passionate, pleading with Makoto to let her make his story into a book. Overwhelmed by her sincerity and desperation, Makoto can only look on in stunned silence. Noah makes one final desperate plea for Makoto to let her publish his story. When he finally agrees, she bursts into tears and hugs him tightly, thanking him with all her heart. Overwhelmed by her passion and sincerity, Makoto is moved to tears as well. Overwhelmed by the moment, Makoto covers his face with his hands. Noah looks on with a gentle smile, while Shimizukasan leans against him, providing quiet support. As they stand together, Makoto realizes that meeting them has given him the strength he needed to finally move forward. The scene shifts to the quiet city lights of the night. As the door opens, Makoto announces his return home, while Noah and a waving Shimizukasan accompany him. Meanwhile, a phone screen shows a woman looking on with a surprised expression. As Makoto steps inside, he is met by Mina. She looks at him with a concerned expression, questioning why he kept her in the dark. Makoto remains silent, realizing that his father has already told her everything. Makoto apologizes to Mina for not informing her sooner, but she reassures him that it is good news. Despite her kindness, Makoto remains anxious and pleads for her support, promising to attend a prestigious university and find a good job, offering to do whatever she asks of him if she lets him pursue this opportunity. Bowing deeply and desperately, Makoto makes one last plea to Mina, begging her to let him have his book published. Mina is visibly touched by Makoto's heartfelt plea, her expression softening as she reflects on his words. After a brief moment of hesitation, she brushes off his worries and excitedly that the three of them, including Haru, go out for a meal to celebrate his achievement. Mina asks Makoto why he didn't consult her first, as his stepmother, instead of going to his father. Looking distressed, Makoto honestly admits that he was afraid the publishing talks would fall through because he felt she didn't believe in him. Makoto's words cut deep as he tells Mina that there is absolutely no way she could ever understand his aspirations. Stunned and emotionally overwhelmed, Mina can only stammer a response, unable to find the words to defend herself. Mina tries to defend herself, claiming she only worried that she hadn't taught him correctly. However, Makoto cuts her off, asserting that she simply wanted things her way. He reminds her that she ignored his side of the story during grade and middle school, concluding that he can no longer trust or believe in her. Mina is left trembling and speechless, her heart heavy with the weight of Makoto's words. As he turns to walk away, Makoto offers a cold apology for his bluntness, but follows it with a chilling promise. If he ever causes her trouble in the future, he will leave the house without hesitation. Mina collapses to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably as she begs for Makoto's forgiveness, devastated that things have gone this far. Beside her, Makoto remains emotionally distant, his cold gaze reflecting a heart that has already shut her out. In a state of panic, Mina reaches out to Makoto, her voice trembling as she screams for him to wait. She desperately begs him not to leave the house, unable to bear the thought of being separated from him. Eri breaks down in tears, torn between her desire for Makoto to stay and her wish for his happiness. She tells him that if he truly feels better without them, then living on his own is a good option, even suggesting that he could use their grandfather's old house. Meanwhile, Mina is devastated, sobbing and refusing to accept the idea of him leaving. Mina declares that Makoto is the son she is proud of, and that she cannot bear the thought of him leaving the house. In an attempt to find a compromise, Ari suggests asking their father if Makoto and she could live together at the grandfather's house. Mina weeps in despair, hoping that if they just wait, things might eventually change for the better. However, Ari looks on with a sorrowful expression, reminding her mother of the harsh reality. Makoto doesn't believe in them because of the way they have treated him. Ari holds on to the sobbing Mina, telling Makoto to leave their mother in her care. With tears in her eyes, she desperately pleads for Makoto to live in peace, hoping he can finally find tranquility without anyone disturbing him. Makoto looks at Ari, surprised by the raw emotion on her face. He admits to himself that he has never seen his stepsister look this way before. Despite his determination to feel nothing regardless of what anyone says, he finds himself questioning if he truly is as indifferent as he wants to be. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Makoto reaches out and gently pats Eri's head. Though he is still confused by the emotions stirring within him, he softly thanks her for her sincerity, leaving Ari blushing and surprised. Eri forces a heartbreaking smile, determined to send Makoto off with positivity despite her crushing sadness. Watching her, Makoto wonders what kind of face he is making in response to her desperate effort to stay strong. Makoto leaves the house and steps out into the morning, hoping for a fresh start. As he walks, he crosses paths with Seidasan. She greets him, momentarily stumbling over her words, before noticing the tired look on his face. Makoto admits to Seidasan that a lot happened yesterday. When she decides to head off, Makoto suddenly asks to go with her, leaving her completely surprised. Makoto warns Seidasan that walking with him might drag her into strange rumors. However, Seidasan dismisses the rumors as stupid, claiming it already too late for such concerns. When Makoto simply tells her that he feels like going with her today, Seidasan is left visibly flustered. As they walk, Makoto reflects on her personality, noting that she reminds him of someone named Seiko-san. Makoto curiously asks Seidasan about her glasses, causing her to react with a flustered, defensive outburst. As the scene transitions through a view of the city, a memory of the morning unfolds. Makoto's mother, Mina, hands him the key to their grandfather's house and his accumulated New Year's money, while Eri is seen sleepily eating her toast at the table. Makoto solemnly promises Mina that he will eventually face her father to resolve things. Feeling guilty for the trouble he is in, Mina gives him heartfelt advice on managing his new life, from eating well to spending tenderly, reminds him that he is always welcome to return home if things get too difficult. Holding the key in his hand, Makoto reflects on how suddenly he found himself living alone without any preparation. Beside him, Seidasan reacts to the news, admitting that she is quite jealous of his independence. Seidasan asks Makoto if his grandfather's house wasn't already furnished, suggesting he only needs basic personal items like clothes and a toothbrush. While Makoto agrees but mentions needing a few more things, Seidasan unexpectedly offers to go shopping with him. Walking through the city streets, Makoto looks ahead with a pensive expression. He can't help but think to himself that he never imagined things would turn out this way. Noticing her hesitation, Makoto asks Seidasan what is wrong. She tentatively suggests that his current situation might be fine, explaining that his mother likely needs time to face herself and that things should improve once the burden of writing a book eases up. Seitan suddenly looks at Makoto with a concerned expression, asking if his move means he won't be coming to the food court anymore. Makoto is caught off guard, responding with a confused look. Makoto reflects on his habits, realizing that he frequently went to the food court simply because he didn't want to return home. At the same time, Seitan points out that the food court isn't a great place for writing, as it's often filled with people trying to hit on girls. Makoto casually tells Tassen that she can come to his place anytime. The sudden invitation leaves Tassen completely overwhelmed and blushing to clarify. Makoto adds that he will still be visiting the food court. Seitan is completely overwhelmed, stuttering in shock at the invitation to Makoto's home. She frantically insists that she didn't ask about the food court, because she'd be lonely. As she rambles, Makoto's thoughts drift back to the food court, recalling the special time he spent talking with Pomeco. Seitan tries to regain her composure, insisting that the food court is simply too distracting for writing because of the people hitting on girls. Makoto listens calmly, agreeing with her, and admitting that he too feels worried about leaving Pomeco alone. Seitan is visibly flustered, questioning if she would be a bother, and reminding him that they aren't even friends, however. Makoto remains unfazed, simply telling her that it's fine and that she is welcome to come to his place to write. As they walk past the school building, Makoto notices a strange tension in the air and asks Seitan if she feels it too. Seitan agrees, noting that people keep glancing in their direction. Makoto casually suggests that the attention is likely because of her glasses, but Seitan quickly snaps back, insisting that that's actually because he doesn't have that weird smile on his face. While their classmates continue to watch them with intense curiosity, Makoto and Seitan remain preoccupied with their own conversation. Makoto mentions that he put his best effort into his work this time, while Seitan complains that talking about it so much has made it impossible to read the latest chapter now. Just as Makoto and Sadasan are talking, Pomeco finally makes it to the classroom, sighing in exhaustion and admitting how beat she feels. Shimizukasan looks on in surprise at her sudden arrival. Sadasan is seen in a daze, a small, happy smile on her face as she reflects on her conversation with Makoto. Meanwhile, Makoto is approached by Nanako, who asks if he has changed his style, noting that he looks different today. Nanako playfully teases Makoto and Seitan, mentioning that she has noticed them talking more at school and thinks they would make a great match. While Seitan looks flustered, Makoto simply denies that their way of speaking has become any more casual. Nanako continues her playful teasing, calling Seitan by her first name, Mizuki, and warning her not to get in the way. While Seitan outwardly remains composed, she secretly feels relieved that she didn't confess, yet she deeply desires for Makoto to be the one to heal her scarred heart. Seitan completely loses her composure, shouting at Nanako with a deep blush on her face. She demands to know why Nanako thinks she and Makoto are a couple, threatening to punch her if she keeps teasing. Nanako keeps pushing Seitan's buttons, bringing up the time Makoto invited her to his house. Despite Seitan's loud and flustered protests, Nanako simply pats her head, teasingly remarking that she doesn't look scary with her glasses, and sounds just like a barking Pomeranian. Nanako quickly pulls a protesting Seitan away, leaving Makoto behind. As she drags her off, Nanako apologizes to Makoto for interrupting his writing time. An awkward silence falls between Makoto and Seitan. Distracted and flustered, Seitan realizes she is no longer in the mood to read her light novel. Instead, her mind wanders as she considers planning what to buy for the new place. Makoto clarifies that he is referring to a cup for himself. Seitan realizes he means a coffee cup, noting that he always drinks coffee, while Makoto simply admits that he needs to buy one. Seitan is caught completely off guard, blushing as she stutters in response to the idea of getting a cup. Makoto looks on with a calm, slight smile, noting that these kinds of moments happened while he was waiting for school to end. Carrying their shopping bags, Makoto and Pomeco walk through the modern interior of a mall. Pomeco looks over their purchases and wonders aloud if they have already managed to get everything they needed. Makoto asks Seitan one last time if she really doesn't want to get a cup. Seitan dismisses the suggestion, mentioning she likely has some at her grandfather's house and reminding him that they are only together for the sake of writing books. As she urges him to hurry home to get their work done, Makoto reflects with a hint of sadness that they aren't actually friends. Pomeco tells Makoto that she needs to use the restroom and asks him to wait for her. Makoto calmly agrees to wait, his expression remaining distant and pensive. Seitan sits alone on a bench, glancing toward Makoto with a worried expression, wondering if he has gotten lost. To occupy herself while waiting, she pulls out her smartphone to read the light novel written by Makoto, mentioning that she didn't have the chance to read it during her lunch break. Shimizukasan arrives at the mall, her presence immediately drawing the attention of several classmates who whisper in admiration. She looks around impatiently, calling out to Pomeco, wondering what is taking her so long. While sitting on a bench, Sadison is suddenly confronted by a group of classmates. One of them greets her with a fake friendliness before cruelly asking if she even has any friends, leaving Sadison stunned and speechless. The classmates' mockery intensifies as they bring up her cringe light novel and a past incident where her supposed best friend Momo took her phone. Overwhelmed by the cruelty, Sadison can only tremble in silence, unable to find the words to defend herself. The bullying intensifies as the classmates suggest calling Momo to join in on the mockery. They sneer at Sadison's high school makeover and cruelly speculate that whoever she is waiting for must be just as weird as she is, leaving her trembling and unable to defend herself. Pomeco returns to Makoto, apologizing for taking so long. Maksu teases her, noting that she doesn't need to hug their belongings so tightly to her chest, blushing. Pomeco suggests that they head back home. As Makoto and Pomeco walk away, the group of classmates is left stunned. They can't believe that someone as handsome as Makoto would be associated with Sayatan, wondering if he is actually her boyfriend. Makoto thoughtfully offers to carry Pomeco's bags as they walk away together. Meanwhile, Shimizukasan hurriedly tries to justify her connection to Seitusen to the other students, claiming she is an old friend, but quickly pivots to mentioning the bad rumors surrounding her. The classmates try to distance Makoto from Sadison, calling her a bad girl, and warning him that she is only playing with him. They invite him to go to karaoke with them, and while they swoon over his attention, they continue to mock Sadison's cringe light novel. Makoto, however, remains completely unfazed by their attempts. The classmates aggressively warn Makoto to never associate with Sadison again, insisting that he is better off spending time with them than with a light novel writing weirdo. Makoto's expression turns cold and serious as he stands his ground against the bullies. He looks directly at them and declares that he will never forgive them if they make his precious friend cry, leaving Sadison stunned and touched by his protective words. After his stern warning, Makoto firmly takes Sadison's hand. He tells her, "Let's go, Shizuka," and leads her away, leaving the group of classmates frozen in shock. Makoto gives a sharp remark to the classmates, warning them not to cry later, as he continues to lead Seitusen away. Seitusen, however, is completely overwhelmed, her face flushing deep red as she struggles to process his bold and protective actions. Makoto calmly mentions a time he cried after someone threw a rock at him, attempting to relate to her. Seitusen indignantly shouts that she isn't crying, but in her heart she admits that she is a complete mess. Makoto hands Seitusen a small gift, telling her to forget about all the bad things that happened. Surprised, Seiden looks at the gift, a cute mucky mug cup, feeling touched by his unexpected kindness. Holding the gift, Seitusen softly mentions that she noticed Makoto's eyes light up when he found the cup at the Destiny shop. However, she immediately blushes and hurriedly adds that she wasn't staring at him the whole time, trying to hide her embarrassment. Seitusen looks down shyly, thanking Makoto for the cute cup and for spending the day shopping with her. However, her sudden shift in mood confuses Makoto, who asks her to decide whether she wants to cry or laugh. In that moment, Makoto reflects on the meaning of Sensei's words. Makoto's firm declaration that he will never forgive anyone who makes his precious friend cry leaves Seitusen completely flustered and happy, while she teases him for his serious expression. She internally reflects on the idea of finding someone to trust completely, feeling that she wouldn't even mind being betrayed if it were him. As they part ways, she wonders if they have finally become true friends, feeling that she is no longer alone. The scene transitions to a peaceful atmosphere at home. Makoto is focused on his laptop, while Pomeco sits nearby at a low table, quietly scrolling through her phone. The comfortable silence is broken by the sound of a whistling kettle. Makoto suggests taking a short break and offers Pomeco some coffee, which she agrees to. As he handles the kettle in the kitchen, Makoto casually mentions that he hasn't heard anything from Seiko-san. While preparing the drinks, Makoto wonders if the publishing talks are progressing well, noting that the editorial department is often bogged down with tasks like finding illustrators. Pomeco listens thoughtfully and suggests that he should update his new work now, warning him that he will soon be very busy with revisions. Makoto falls into deep thought, humming to himself as he processes Pomeco's advice regarding his publishing schedule. Holding her cup, Pomeco looks at Makoto with an expectant and slightly shy expression, asking him what he thinks of her romance novel. Makoto delivers his honest opinion, questioning if her story can even be called a romance novel given the sudden outbursts of dancing and fighting. Pomeco is left completely stunned by the critique, and as she silently sips her drink with a blank expression, Makoto wonders why she is reacting so strangely. Makoto asks Pomeco if her work contains actual romance, admitting that he doesn't really understand it since he has never experienced love himself. This leaves Pomeco completely flustered. She quickly protests, admitting that she hasn't dated anyone either and that her stories are simply based on her own delusions. Makoto looks at Pomeco with a doubtful expression, asking if she is sure about what she just said. Flustered and embarrassed, Pomeco loudly insists that she is. After a brief silence, Makoto bluntly admits that he thought Pomeco wrote her story based on actual experience. Pomeco vehemently denies it, blushing with embarrassment, and quickly tries to move the conversation forward. Pomeco abruptly shifts the conversation, asking Makoto if Hez prepared for their trip in 3 days. Confused, Makoto questions why he would need to do anything. Exasperated by his lack of foresight, Pomeco begins lecturing him with excitement, explaining that he needs comfortable clothes, shoes, and a practical bag, while also stressing the importance of mapping out the most efficient route to enjoy the park rides. Pomeco's enthusiasm reaches a new peak as she excitedly discovers a new popcorn flavor, declaring that they must note down the exact locations of the wagons. Makoto, sipping from his mug with a deadpan look, can only think about how much fun she seems to be having. Pomeco leans over the table, lecturing Makoto with intense passion, insisting that he must get serious if he wants to experience Destiny Land to the fullest. Overwhelmed by her sudden intensity, Makoto can only respond with a confused and hesitant okay. Makoto softly suggests that they should have fun on their trip. Pomeco responds with enthusiastic agreement, her face flushing with joy. Feeling grateful to be accompanying him, she tells him that she will handle all the necessary arrangements for him. Now at school, Pomeco is fully immersed in her preparations, showing her friends a picture of Mucky's house on her phone. As she excitedly maps out the path they will take, a classmate observes that she has never seen Shizuka look so genuinely happy before. Pomeco excitedly thrusts her phone in front of Makoto's face, showing him a seasonal menu. She enthusiastically suggests they have their lunch there, asking for his agreement. Makoto looks on with a calm expression, noting to himself just how much she truly loves Destiny Land. Makoto softly thanks Pomeco for planning things out for him as well. Blushing and filled with joy, Pomeco admits how much she is looking forward to their trip together. Makoto stands aside, quietly observing Pomeco as she talks animatedly with another classmate. Nearby, Miyazaki Shizuka watches the scene, her eyes wide with a look of curiosity. Makoto watches silently, his gaze fixed on Pomeco. Nearby, Miyazaki Shizuka observes Pomeco chatting animatedly with her classmates, her attention focused on the girl's behavior. Pomeco looks down at her phone, feeling a wave of insecurity as she thinks about how pretty Makoto's childhood friend is compared to herself. Although she tries to tell herself it's not true, she is suddenly startled by something, leaving her wide-eyed and blushing. The scene shifts back to the classroom. Pomeco stays quiet, looking down at her phone as Makoto reflects on something, adding, "Or so I think." Sira approaches Makoto with a request, asking him to be the first to read her latest romance novel. While Pomeco listens in, Makoto bluntly remarks that Sira's writing doesn't compare to Pomeco's romantic depictions, which earns him a sharp retort. Despite the teasing, Sira insists that Makoto come over to her place after school to read the story. After arriving at her place, Makoto tells Sira that her romance novel doesn't feel like romance at all, and advises her against publishing such works under her pen name. He critiques her battle-like ending, noting that it feels more like a fantasy prologue than a romantic conclusion, and urges her to stick to her forte. While he admits the story is sympathetic, he confesses that reading it makes him feel a strange sense of embarrassment. Sira reflects on her work, admitting that while finishing the story felt embarrassing, the act of writing it was actually fun. Makoto listens and gives a simple acknowledgement, while Pomeco looks on, unable to find the right words to describe her own feelings. Sira tells Makoto that she is happy he found her story easy to connect with. She then explains the premise of her novel, describing a hero and heroine who are both betrayed by their own countries and unexpectedly meet. As she describes the story of betrayal and isolation, Sira suddenly freezes, realizing that she may have unconsciously projected her own feelings and her relationship with Makoto into the plot. Makoto simply stares at her in silence. Sira admits that Makoto was right about her not being suited for romance novels. When Makoto tells her that she doesn't have to throw everything away, Sira becomes overwhelmed by embarrassment, realizing why the story felt so awkward. In a sudden panic, she decides to delete the novel entirely, leaving Makoto completely bewildered. Makoto urges Sira to reconsider deleting her work, insisting that the story is actually interesting. He tells her that it's a story he can sympathize with, and suggests she continue releasing it as a side project. Makoto solemnly vows to carefully foster and develop the story, promising to help her with it. Sira looks at him with a bewildered expression, completely surprised by his sudden enthusiasm. Noticing the time, Sira realizes she needs to head home and stop by a convenience store for dinner. As she prepares to leave, Makoto, appearing flustered, impulsively invites her to have dinner together. Sira tells Makoto that she doesn't want to bother him, though she mentions her older sister wants her to focus on her writing. Makoto, however, points out that Shikosen might get worried if she stays out too late, causing Sira to react emphatically. As they talk, Makoto begins to mention an upcoming trip. Makoto suggests making their dinner a special Eve party since they have a trip tomorrow, telling her there's no need to hold back. Blushing and excited, Sira eagerly agrees, promising to help out. Sira tries her best to help prepare the meal, but her lack of skill results in a disastrously chopped pile of vegetables. Makoto can only watch in disbelief at the carnage on the cutting board. Makoto watches Pomeco with a look of dread. Convinced that she's going to hurt herself if she keeps chopping like that, he tries to intervene, telling her that they already have all the vegetables they need for tonight. However, Pomeco stubbornly insists she wasn't even giving it her all, and demands another vegetable to chop. Just then, she suddenly remembers a forgotten chore, and asks Makoto to wipe down the table for her. As a pot boils on the stove, Makoto takes the task of cleaning the table seriously, reminding Pomeco that it's important to keep their surroundings clean before they eat. Pomeco simply agrees, looking slightly bewildered by his enthusiasm. With the preparations complete, Makoto and Pomeco begin their dinner. Pomeco is absolutely thrilled by the food, her face flushing with joy as she eats, while Makoto looks on at her enthusiastic reaction. Makoto takes a sip of his drink while Pomeco sits across from him, her expression one of pure contentment and happiness during their quiet meal together. Pomeco apologizes for making Makoto handle the dishes, but he brushes it off, shifting the focus to their trip tomorrow. With a determined look, Makoto holds up a guide and tells Pomeco that she needs to memorize the park map and the notes he has carefully prepared for their visit to Destiny Land. Pomeco wonders if they'll get to see Mucky Mucky tomorrow. Meanwhile, Makoto reflects on her catastrophic cooking skills, worrying if he can even trust her with the dishes without her breaking something. He then focuses on his guide, pondering the queue times for Splash River and hoping they can find a good spot for the parade. Pomeco is absolutely beaming with anticipation, her cheeks flushed as she holds her cup. She admits is so excited for the trip that she doesn't think she'll be able to get any sleep tonight, while Makoto watches her with a calm expression. Makoto calmly reminds Pomeco that she won't be able to enjoy the day if she doesn't get any sleep tonight. Pomeco, blushing and flustered, insists that she already knows. As they share this lighthearted moment, the narrator reflects that spending time together in such a merry way is what being friends is all about. As he looks forward to the trip with Pomeco, Makoto is reminded of his lonely past. He recalls how he always spent his time alone during school outings, ignored by everyone even during bus activities, leaving him with no fond memories of field trips. But back in the present, Makoto waits outside, noting that it is only 6:30. Pomeco emerges, brimming with excitement, telling her mother to look forward to the souvenirs she will bring back before they head off on their trip. Pomeco tries to play it cool, insisting she isn't that excited as she steps outside. However, she is completely caught off guard to find Makoto already waiting for her. Makoto awkwardly greets her, admitting that he might have arrived a bit too early. Mina beams with a gentle smile, clearly amused by her daughter's reaction. Feeling awkward, Pomeco tries to compose herself and suggests that they first look around in front of Kaihama Station. Makoto politely apologizes to Mina for his early arrival, attempting to introduce himself as Pomeco's acquaintance. Before he can finish, Mina beams and introduces him as Pomeco's friend Shinjo, while a flustered Pomeco reacts to her mother's behavior. Mina greets Makoto with a kind smile, introducing herself as Pomeco's mother, and mentioning that both Pomeco and Seiko have told her a lot about him. Completely flustered, Pomeco frantically tries to stop her mother from revealing too much. Still flustered and blushing, Pomeco hurriedly pulls Makoto away, insisting that they just go. Mina waves goodbye with a warm smile, wishing them a wonderful time together. Makoto gazes at Pomeco, completely struck by her appearance in casual clothes. He thinks to himself that he has never seen her dressed like this before, feeling as though she is a completely different person when she dresses up. Pomeco, blushing slightly, gives him a shy morning greeting. Pomeco walks ahead with a shy expression, while Makoto follows behind her, still captivated by her presence. As they continue their walk, Makoto brings up Pomeco's appearance. Flustered, Pomeco admits that she took the time to dress up specifically for today. Makoto then softly whispers to her that the outfit fits her perfectly and that she looks cute. Pomeco giggles, teasing Makoto for finally giving her a compliment. Flustered and blushing, Makoto quickly tries to deny it, claiming he was just talking to himself. Despite the awkwardness, they move forward, ready to enjoy their day together. As they travel, Makoto realizes how quickly time flies when he and Pomeco talk about light novels. Their conversation is interrupted by the train announcement as they arrive at Kaihama Station, leaving Pomeco surprised by how fast the journey went. Upon arriving at Kaihama Station, Pomeco excitedly points toward a place called Ixex, suggesting they visit. She mentions that while they are meant to meet in the underground parking lot, they have enough time for a stroll. Makoto agrees, though he notes that only cafes are likely to be open, looking at Pomeco with a soft content expression. As they make their way, Makoto and Pomeco encounter Sensei. After exchanging morning greetings, Sensei looks at them with a knowing expression, noting that the two of them seem to be getting along quite well. Pomeco smiles warmly and confirms that she and Makoto have indeed become friends. Sensei waves goodbye as she walks away, encouraging them to make as many enjoyable memories as possible and wishing them a fun trip. After Sensei departs, Pomeco turns to Makoto and honestly admits that she never thought they would end up as friends. She continues to tease him, calling him a scary-eyed Yankee and mocking his creepy fake smile. The light-hearted teasing fades as the conversation turns serious. Makoto candidly admits that he still doesn't trust anyone, stating he has no plan to trust people unconditionally. Pomeco tells him to forget her previous words, but firmly asserts that she could never betray her friends. Pomeco glances at Makoto, her expression softening with a slight blush as she adds a quiet exception. If it's Shizuka, then things might be different. Pomeco continues her thought, admitting that she feels fine as long as she is with Makoto, since neither of them are very confident. However, she suddenly realizes the weight of her words and becomes flustered, finding the situation embarrassing. Sensing the awkwardness, Makoto quickly suggests heading to a nearby mucky shop to change the subject. Makoto asks about the strange, intimidating mouse-like creature. Pomeco quickly corrects him, passionately explaining that it is actually Mucky, the mascot of Destiny, and that it is a chinchilla. Pomeco passionately declares that Mucky is real and one of a kind. Makoto, still slightly skeptical, asks how many costumes are actually available, but he quickly apologizes after seeing Pomeco's reaction. Pomeco huffs, calling Mucky a special guy, and internally resolves that they should work hard to find him in the park. She tells Makoto that as long as he understands, she is absolutely determined to get a photo with Mucky. Makoto looks at Pomeco and suggests that since they are already together, they should do something. Blushing deeply and clutching her phone, Pomeco shyly asks if they could take a photo together. Pomeco suggests taking the photo in front of the Mucky show window. As they stand there, a poignant thought reflects on how memories stay in the heart and resurface whenever one looks back at a photo of that moment. Makoto clears his throat and suggests using his smartphone to take the picture, offering to send the photo to Pomeco later. However, Pomeco decides it's better to use both of their phones. As she prepares, she fumbles with her settings, trying to figure out how to switch to selfie mode before finally finding the right option. With her phone ready and a cute Mucky sticker on the back, Pomeco positions herself and Makoto for the shot, murmuring "let's see." As she prepares to take the photo, Pomeco tells Makoto to come closer. She explains that if he stays where he is, he won't be in the picture, prompting a hesitant response from a flustered Makoto. Pomeco insists on getting even closer, pulling Makoto right next to her for the perfect selfie. Makoto looks overwhelmed and flustered by the sudden closeness as Pomeco prepares to snap the photo. The smartphone screen captures the two of them side by side, both blushing intensely from the closeness. Makoto stammers, overwhelmed by the intimacy, and admitting he doesn't know how this works, to which Pomeco softly replies that it is her first time too. Pomeco decides to set a timer for their photo. However, as they remain in close proximity, she notices Makoto's flustered face, only for him to point out that she looks just as awkward. Despite the embarrassment, Pomeco hurriedly starts the timer. The camera shutter clicks, capturing the moment. As Pomeco looks at the resulting photo, she can't help but notice how unnatural they both look, commenting that they both appear far too tense. Pomeco looks toward Makoto, softly noting that this is their first picture together, and a precious timens boss. Makoto simply responds with a quiet yeah, as they share a tender, shy moment. Pomeco jumps with excitement, holding her phone high as she declares her intention to fill their day with plenty of pictures. Makoto, standing beside her, can only plead for her to be gentle with him, marking the start of an unexpected day. The view pans across a grand castle-like building before shifting to a crowded area. There, Shizuka stands with a pensive and troubled look on her face, causing someone nearby to ask her what is wrong. Looking anxious, the Makoto asks Shizuka if the chapter he published this morning was too boring. Shizuka hesitates, looking troubled, before softly replying that it wasn't. Makoto looks toward Kurosawa Momo and asks if they're going to have fun today. Kurosawa Momo responds with a hesitant tone, admitting that the environment they are in is not one of her favorites. Makoto softly calls her name Shizuka. Kurosawa Momo looks back at him and replies with a soft yes, a gentle smile and a slight blush appearing on her face. Looking away with a soft, longing expression, Kurosawa Momo admits that she would have preferred to come here without all these students around. Flustered, Makoto quickly agrees with Kurosawa Momo's sentiment. To break the tension, he pulls out his smartphone, noting that since the teacher won't be arriving for a while, he might as well check his novels. His sudden shift in focus leaves Kurosawa Momo looking on in confusion. As the teacher begins calling the roll for the group, Makoto ignores the commotion and asks Kurosawa Momo if she is familiar with an author called Paguko. The teacher calls out to the students to give them the directions for the day. She explains that because of the school event, they will be there until 4 p.m., after which they will return to the meeting point to be free. She adds that they can go back to Destinyland before heading home and tells them to be careful as they depart. With a blush and an excited expression, Kurosawa Momo reaches her hand out toward Makoto, calling him by his last name and urging him to follow the crowd inside. Overcome with excitement, Kurosawa Momo rushes ahead, nearly losing her footing as she trips. Makoto looks on in alarm, reaching out and warning her that running is dangerous. Makoto looks on with concern, but Kurosawa Momo quickly bounces back with a bright smile and a peace sign. She tells him that she's okay and asks him not to worry so much. Kurosawa Momo is beaming with joy as she looks at the magnificent castle of Destinyland, eager to start their adventure. Makoto, however, remains composed, reminding her that they first need to secure their tickets while privately thinking that she is far too agitated. Kurosawa Momo tries to focus on their plan, but she suddenly spots Taki the mascot nearby. Overwhelmed with excitement, she desperately wants to take a picture, but remembers that they must get their tickets first, leaving her in a state of cute panic. Kurosawa Momo decides that following the plan isn't everything, and that doing what she wants is just as important. With a sudden burst of excitement, she shouts for Taki and rushes toward the mascot. Kurosawa Momo happily captures the moment with a selfie of her, Makoto, and Taki. While Momo remains energetic, Makoto looks completely drained by her enthusiasm. Soon after, they join the other students and board a ride, ascending high above the park. After the excitement, Makoto and Kurosawa Momo share a quiet moment, sitting side by side on a bench while eating ice treats. While exploring Destinyland, Kurosawa Momo spots a display of tacky headpieces. Excitedly, she picks one up and urges Makoto to put it on, claiming he would look cool. Makoto, feeling embarrassed, hesitates, but Momo insists that since everyone else is wearing one, there is no problem. Makoto eventually gives in and puts on the headpiece, though he is internally shocked that has actually doing something so embarrassing. Kurosawa Momo is thrilled, praising his look and telling him he can take it off if he dislikes it. She then happily shows him her own headband, pointing out that hers also has ears. Kurosawa Momo is absolutely thrilled with her new accessory, exclaiming that the bunny tiara is beautiful. She poses cutely, looking at Makoto and eagerly asking for his thoughts on her look. Makoto tells Kurosawa Momo that she looks very good in her bunny tiara. Confused by his reaction, Momo insists that he should look at her and not feel ashamed about wearing a headpiece himself. However, Makoto begins to doubt whether he should actually buy the tacky headpiece. While walking through the park, Makoto notices Sira standing off to the side with a disgruntled expression, wondering what could have happened to her. However, Kurosawa Momo simply brushes it off as nothing, leaving Makoto confused. Sarah looks completely devastated, tears welling up in her eyes. Noticing her state, Makoto remarks that something bad must have happened. Moved by the sight, Kurosawa Momo asks Makoto if she can go talk to the girl, to which he readily agrees. Kurosawa Momo steps forward to confront Sira, bluntly asking, "What do you want?" Sira looks on in shock and confusion, while Makoto stands behind Momo, silently observing the interaction. Following her blunt question, Kurosawa Momo asks Sira if she has perhaps lost sight of her friends, reminding her that the park is quite large. Sira remains surprised as she listens to her. A group of girls giggle and whisper mockingly as they walk away. Makoto and Kurosawa Momo watch them with displeased looks, while Sira is left behind, overwhelmed with emotion and letting out a distressed sob. Overwhelmed by emotion, Sira snaps and shouts back, insisting that she hasn't lost sight of anyone, her expression a mix of anger and sadness. Overwhelmed by emotion, Sira continues to cry, her voice trembling as she questions why things have to be like this. Beside her, Kurosawa Momo looks on with a cold, indifferent expression. Kurosawa Momo asks Sira for her name. She then introduces herself as Shimizuka Anri, explaining that she and Shinjo Makoto are visiting the park for a school trip. Sira, still appearing distressed and shaken, can only manage a faint okay in response. Hazaki Chisa introduces herself as Hazaki Chisa, a third-grade elementary student, before coldly asking to be left alone. Kurosawa Momo tries to probe further, asking Hayazaki Chisa if she had been ditched by the other girls. Startled and irritated, Chisa snaps back, telling her that it is none of her business. Hayazaki Chisa fumes with anger, clutching her bag tightly. She declares that she doesn't care about those idiots, and that she can't enjoy Destinyland with people as jealous as them, concluding that the whole situation just sucks. Makoto watches silently as Hayuzakichi suddenly stops her, complaining, looking bewildered and confused. Kurosawa Momo tells Hayuzaki Chisa that the bunny ears look good on her and asks Makoto if he agrees. Makoto adds that while she isn't as pretty as Momo, the ears still look good. Completely flustered and blushing, Chisa shouts at them for making fun of her and tells them to get away, while a narrator reflects that if she can still cry, it is not too late. Makoto and Kurosawa Momo look on with neutral expressions, telling the young girl that she is wasting her time since Destinyland is no place to cry. They decide to move on and suggest getting a drink together. As they prepare to leave, Hyuzaki Chisa looks on with a softened, blushing expression and quietly whispers a thank you. Kurosawa Momo suddenly notices that it is already lunchtime. Hyozaki Chisa, still feeling flustered, can only stammer in response before grumbling quietly to herself as she holds her drink. Kurosawa Momo gestures forward, telling Hyuzaki Chisa to follow her as they head off together. As they walk, Hyozaki Chisa asks where they are going. Kurosawa Momo looks back at her with a bright smile and tells her they are going to have lunch. As they walk away, Kurosawa Momo teases Makoto, telling him that he is not very good at making invitations. The group finds a place to eat, marking a moment of unexpected companionship. Kurosawa Momo is in high spirits, eagerly deciding on a limited edition pasta set that comes with special goodies. While Makoto remains quiet, Momo turns her attention to the shy Hyuzaki Chisa, asking what she would like to eat, leading Chisa to softly make her choice from the menu. The scene cuts away to a close-up of a smartphone. The screen displays a failed call attempt, and the person holding the phone realizes with a sense of dread that they have been blocked. Miyazaki Shizuka stands before them, her face flushed with a mix of regret and uncertainty. She softly admits that she doesn't even know why she came there today, while Makoto looks back at her with a cold, indifferent expression, accompanied by Kurosawa Momo. Miyazaki Shizuka's attention is drawn to a small stuffed animal attached to Hyuzaki Chisa's bag, leading her to ask a curious question. Hyuzaki Chisa suddenly becomes flustered and defensive, shouting that the stuffed animal is her precious familiar. She warns them not to make fun of pugs from Tetsuro the Bloody Brave, insisting that the toy is her friend, while Makoto and Kurosawa Momo watch her reaction with bewildered expression. The atmosphere turns somber as Kurosawa Momo looks on with a melancholy expression, recalling a time of isolation when she never spoke to anyone on the bus, feeling alone and sad. Both Makoto and Miyazaki Shizuka react with surprise and confusion to Momo's revelation, leaving them momentarily speechless as they look at her. Makoto recalls the bitterness of being ignored and hated by the entire school, despite his repeated apologies. Similarly, Kurosawa Momo remembers the pain of being shunned by everyone after upsetting the leader of her social group. The void of their memories is filled with the echoes of the past. They recall the absurd and cruel accusations they faced, from being accused of stealing a boy they didn't even like, to being branded a pervert and a criminal simply for trying to protect someone. Miyazaki Shizuka stares in disbelief, her mind racing as she tries to process the shocking revelations. Completely blindsided by their stories of isolation and false accusations, she can only stammer in confusion, asking what on earth they are talking about. Makoto and Kurosawa Momo continue to open up about their painful histories. Makoto admits that his unpopularity at school made him feel like a nuisance to his own family, while Momo recalls the betrayal of a friend who exposed her secrets to the entire class. Both share the crushing weight of their isolation, admitting they reached a point where they could no longer cry and believed that trusting anyone was impossible. But, after sharing the depths of their isolation and pain, Makoto and Kurosawa Momo find a silent understanding between them. As they bond over their shared scars, Miyazaki Shizuka can only watch from the side, utterly bewildered by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Makoto speaks calmly, describing a story about an oppressed hero who grows up while journeying with a demon. He mentions Tetsuro, calling it a great story, before admitting that there is nothing he can do to help her. Surprised by his reaction, Miyazaki Shizuka asks if he really doesn't make fun of Tetsuro, before curiously inquiring if there is anything else he likes. Miyazaki Shizuka becomes visibly excited, mentioning that she has recently taken a liking to death game Kara Hajimaru Isegai Seikatsu and finds it hilarious. Turning her attention back to Makoto, she curiously asks him which character from the series is his favorite. Miyazaki Shizuka asks tentatively if it's alright to talk about their interests. Makoto looks at her, confused by her hesitation, and tells her that it's a wonderful time to talk about the things they enjoy. With sparkling eyes and pure excitement, Miyazaki Shizuka eagerly asks Makoto which character he likes. Makoto pauses for a moment, thoughtfully considering his answer. Overcome by a sudden wave of embarrassment, Miyazaki Shizuka slams her head onto the table. She laments that she has started talking too fast again, feeling grossed out by her own behavior. Internally, Miyazaki Shizuka is in a state of bliss, thinking that her dream has finally come true and admitting how much she looked forward to this day. As she struggles to contain her excitement, Kurosawa Momo turns to Makoto and asks if he would like to go around the park with them today. Miyazaki Shizuka trembles with nervous excitement, her heart racing. As Kurosawa Momo encourages her to have some fun at Destinyland, Shizuka is left completely stunned, overwhelmed by the moment. Miyazaki Shizuka suddenly declares that she doesn't want to interrupt their date, leaving Kurosawa Momo in total shock. As Shizuka explains that she will go kill some time writing elsewhere, Momo becomes increasingly flustered, while Makoto simply watches on with a blank expression. Miyazaki Shizuka remains convinced, arguing that if only the two of them go around, it's essentially a date. Makoto, however, responds to the deadpan expression, reminding her that it's just a school trip. As the conversation continues, Miyazaki Shizuka suddenly proposes a solution, asking Kurosawa Momo if they should all explore the park together as a group. Kurosawa Momo reacts with confusion, demanding to know who Poguko is. Both she and Makoto are puzzled by the strange name, while Miyazaki Shizuka becomes completely flustered and panics over her mistake. Kurosawa Momo is bewildered, questioning if Poguko is some kind of writer. However, Makoto looks on with a knowing smirk, asking how Shizuka knows Shinjo's. This revelation leaves Miyazaki Shizuka in a state of absolute panic, terrified that her secret has been exposed. Makoto calmly explains how he connected the dots, mentioning the pug charm on Shizuka's bag and her previous comment about writing. He admits he didn't expect it to be so easy to expose her. Shizuka can only groan in distress, while Kurosawa Momo finally understands the situation. Feeling exposed and vulnerable, Miyazaki Shizuka looks at Makoto with apprehension, asking if he is going to make fun of her like everyone else does. Makoto looks back at her with a neutral expression. Kurosawa Momo suddenly puts her finger to Miyazaki Shizuka's lips to stop her from speaking. With a determined expression, she tells Shizuka that Makoto would never do such a thing. Makoto calmly assures Miyazaki Shizuka that he won't laugh at her secret, touched by his kindness. Shizuka softly thanks him as they prepare to leave. Kurosawa Momo excitedly urges them to go find Maki, but she can't resist teasing Shizuka by calling her Poguko, prompting a flustered and annoyed reaction from the Miyazaki Shizuka. The view opens up to the grand scale of Destinyland, showcasing the massive Ferris wheel and the winding roller coaster tracks. As a cheerful voice recalls how much fun the parade and the attractions were, Pomeco looks at her phone with a smile, amazed by the number of pictures she has taken throughout the day. As they prepare to depart, Miyazaki Shizuka tells Hayozaki that it is time to go. Pomeco sighs softly, wishing she could have captured a photo of Maki with them, but they were unable to find him after all. Against the backdrop of the theme park's attractions, Miyazaki Shizuka addresses Makoto, telling him that it is time to return to the assembly point and questioning if he intends to go straight back. Makoto looks at Kurosawa Momo with a solemn expression. He tells her that he cannot simply say she will be fine or tell her to hang in there, as such words would be insincere. With a soft, blushing expression, Kurosawa Momo reflects on the journey that led her, Makoto and Miyazaki Shizuka, to become friends. She acknowledges the value of their connection, feeling grateful that they can be together even though she knows the risks of trusting strangers. Instead of a final farewell, Makoto looks at them and suggests that they shouldn't say goodbye today, proposing that they all come back here together again. Blushing with a small smile, Miyazaki Shizuka gives a playful response, agreeing to hang out with them again. Beside her, Makoto and Kurosawa Momo share a warm, contented look, marking a peaceful end to their time together. Miyazaki Shizuka waves energetically, confirming her excitement to hang out with them again. Beside Makoto, Kurosawa Momo smiles and waves her phone, telling him that she will be in touch. As she prepares to depart, Miyazaki Shizuka stands by the bus, a soft, suppressed giggle escaping her as she reflects on the encounter. Miyazaki Shizuka boards the bus, her expression solemn as she tells herself that she doesn't care about others. However, her attention is soon diverted when she checks her phone and discovers a new message waiting for her in the website's mailbox. Opening her inbox, Miyazaki Shizuka is stunned to see messages from Pomeco and Nyanta. Completely bewildered, she wonders what is going on. Miyazaki Shizuka is completely enamored, realizing that Pomeco and Nyanta are just like her. Her reaction doesn't go unnoticed by Kurosawa Momo, who asks about the website. Though hesitant, Shizuka admits it's a novel site and eventually gives in to Momo's request for the URL, all while reflecting on how Makoto's happy expression sparked her own curiosity. After the field trip, Sensei dismisses the students, warning them not to let their celebrations go too late. As Makoto and Pomeco depart, Makoto quietly hopes that Hyuzaki is doing all right. Pomeco then turns to him with a determined look, stating that they will find Maki this time, and Makoto simply agrees. Pomeco excitedly suggests taking a picture of the castle to show Hyuzaki, and Makoto agrees to the idea. Makoto recalls how they vanished almost instantly after the parade. Remembering that Pomeco mentioned they live in Destinyland, he suggests asking around for them, while skeptically wondering if Pomeco and Mucky are capable of spatial transference. Pomeco tells Makoto that he doesn't have to go out of his way to find Mucky. As she looks around, she mentions that it's a shame Shizukasan can't see the view. Makoto, looking slightly flustered, tries to respond, calling her Shizuka. Makoto looks at Pomeco and tells her that he knows she has been looking forward to meeting Mucky for a long time. Surprised by his observation, Pomeco reacts with a flustered hey. Still blushing and flustered, Pomeco hurriedly tries to brush off the topic. She suggests that they just take a walk around the park, enjoy the fireworks and the parade, and have a relaxing time before going home, leaving Makoto looking slightly bewildered. As Pomeco leads the way toward the attraction, Makoto looks at her with a skeptical expression. He wonders if her hectic plan is really what she considers relaxing, but he decides to go along with it since she wants to so badly. Pomeco excitedly shares a message from Hayuzaki, revealing that she has made a new friend. Makoto smiles, relieved that Hayuzaki is doing well. As they talk, Makoto reflects on the importance of taking action, realizing that if he hadn't written the novel, he never would have met Pomeco. Pomeco gazes thoughtfully, realizing she can no longer imagine her school life without Makoto. She wonders if they would have become friends even if she hadn't written the novel, before firmly deciding that they would have, simply because of how much she wants to be by his side. Makoto calmly admits that he is fine with Pomeco being by his side. However, the mood shifts slightly as he is asked if he misses Hayuzaki. Pomeco is confused by Makoto's words, asking him what he is talking about. However, Makoto looks at her with a serious expression and declares that she is special to him. Overwhelmed by his sudden and sincere confession, Pomeco is left blushing intensely, unable to form a complete sentence. Makoto looks at Pomeco with a sincere expression, doubling down on his words. He tells her once more that she is special, causing Pomeco to hide behind her book, completely overwhelmed by his honesty. Pomeco is completely overwhelmed by Makoto's sincerity, her face flushing deep red as she begs him to stop embarrassing her. Makoto, seeing her intense reaction, looks on with a mix of surprise and slight embarrassment himself. Just as the tension between them peaks, a rabbit mascot suddenly appears in front of them, leaving both Makoto and Pomeco completely stunned. Pomeco suddenly realizes that the rabbit mascot is Mucky. Overcome with excitement, she urges Makoto to chase after him, pointing toward the witch's castle as the mascot's likely destination, insisting that this is their last chance. Makoto looks on with a confused expression as they push through the throng of people. Pomeco expresses her concern, fearing that they will lose each other in the crowd. In response, a hand reaches out to hold on to her. Walking through the sea of people, Makoto looks concerned, worrying that it would be terrible if they were to get lost. Holding hands to ensure they stay together, Makoto and Pomeco continue their search. However, as they look around, they realize that Mucky has disappeared, leaving them wondering where he could have gone. As the day comes to a close, Pomeco looks at Makoto with a gentle smile, telling him that she truly enjoyed herself. Makoto agrees, but as he gazes at the castle, he is reminded of his pasta time when he felt he could trust no one but himself and his family. He reflects on his journey, realizing how far he has come to be standing here with her now, under the brilliant display of fireworks. Makoto and Pomeco stand together, holding hands. Looking at her with a gentle smile, Makoto reflects on his journey from isolation to this moment, acknowledging that he has finally met someone he can trust. Pomeco looks up in awe, exclaiming how beautiful the fireworks are. Beside her, Makoto continues to hold her hand, wondering about the strange feeling rising from deep inside his heart. Pomeco reflects on her heart, realizing that despite thinking she had lost all her feelings long ago, they are still there. With a blush, she softly declares that Shinjo is her special someone. Beside her, Makoto looks on, acknowledging the impact of having met her. As they hold hands tightly, Makoto admits that he has found someone he can love this much. He softly asks Pomeco if he can call her Anri, which catches her by surprise. Blushing deeply, Pomeco agrees and shyly asks if she can call him Shinkan too. Pomeco beams with a bright smile, exclaiming of course, as she happily accepts the new names. Makoto looks on, completely taken aback by her sudden burst of enthusiasm. Makoto is still reeling from the emotion of the moment, softly calling her Anri, while Pomeco happily responds to him as Shin. However, their romantic atmosphere is suddenly broken when Mucky appears out of nowhere, leaving them both surprised. Makoto and Pomeco call out to each other, using their new nicknames, their expressions radiating pure happiness. Both express their heartfelt gratitude for having met one another, promising to always remain by each other's side. As they walk away hand in hand, a final realization settles in. It is not too late, and they will start their new journey together from this moment forward. With a gentle and content smile on his face, Makoto looks forward, while the Mucky mascot hanging from his bag serves as a lasting testament to the memories he and Anri have shared. The warmth of the memories lingers as the scene shifts. Pomeco stands in her room, the mucky mascot on the bag serving as a silent reminder of the special day they shared, while the quiet neighborhood outside reflects a peaceful return to their daily lives. Pomeco starts her day in a bright mood, glancing at Mucky on her bag. Just as she settles in, a voice suddenly calls out Anri, catching her off guard and making her blush. Flustered and blushing, Pomeco shouts at her mother for being too loud. In her haste to leave, she quickly rushes out of her room, only to come face-to-face with Makoto. Makoto looks at Pomeco with a gentle expression and softly says, "Good morning, Anri." Pomeco is caught off guard, her face flushing as she reacts to him using her special name. Blushing and flustered, Pomeco shyly returns the greeting, calling him Shinjo. Meanwhile, her mother watches the interaction with an amused and curious expression. Mina giggles, teasing Pomeco for acting like a little girl, and pointing out that her ribbon is crooked. Flustered and embarrassed, Pomeco shouts that she can fix it herself, while Makoto calmly tells them it's time to go. Mina suddenly invites Makoto to come over for dinner sometime, leaving both him and a flustered Pomeco completely surprised. As they finally depart, Pomeco waves goodbye to her mother and shouts that she's off. As they walk, Pomeco tells Makoto that her mother wants to talk to him. Makoto reacts with curiosity, but Pomeco quickly adds that Mina is probably just trying to make fun of him. While Makoto remains thoughtful, Pomeco becomes flustered, insisting that it's not true. Makoto begins to explain his reasoning, noting that Pomeco avoids calling him Shinjo whenever her mother is around. Pomeco looks completely overwhelmed and embarrassed by his observation. Pomeco blushes deeply, admitting how embarrassing the situation is. Makoto questions if that's the real reason, and a flustered Pomeco quickly confirms it. Makoto remarks that being an editor must be a tough job. He recalls a conversation about visiting an editorial office this coming weekend with Pomeco's sister, who even works on Saturdays. Makoto tells Pomeco that he will pick her up at home, reminding her not to be late. Pomeco is initially flustered and hesitant, but she quickly brightens up and excitedly asks Makoto if he would like to go to karaoke after their visit. Makoto takes a moment to process the suggestion, a slight blush appearing on his cheeks. He quietly admits that he is interested in going to karaoke with her. Makoto agrees to the karaoke outing, leaving Pomeco beaming with joy. She then asks if Shizuka-san could join them, and Makoto tells her he might ask. The scene then shifts to the exterior of the school building. Makoto stands by his locker with a neutral expression, preparing for his day. In the background, a couple of classmates are whispering to each other, noting that Shinozuka's mood has shifted, and her expression has become noticeably more gentle. Makoto continues to overhear the boys, who remark that Anra's tough aura has vanished, describing her as shining and even cute. While Makoto acknowledges to himself that he does have feelings for Anri that go beyond friendship, he is left confused by a sudden, irritating feeling rising within him. Trying to shake off the irritating feeling, Makoto tells himself not to panic, insisting that his feelings for Anri aren't love. He worries that admitting such feelings would only lead to trouble with her. Anri walks up to Makoto and suggests they head home together. Noticing his distant expression, she asks him what's wrong. Internally, Makoto is plagued by confusion, wondering about the tightening sensation in his chest, and feeling as if he is only fooling himself. Flustered and blushing, Makoto finally agrees to head home. However, Anri and Seita-san suddenly chime in, insisting that they will go with him, leaving him completely caught off guard. Shimizuka-san quickly apologizes, telling them not to worry about the situation. As they part ways, Sato-san softly says goodbye to Makoto, who responds with a simple quiet goodbye in return. After parting ways with Seita-san, Shimizuka-san looks thoughtful as she walks beside Makoto. She curiously asks him if he and Seita-san used to be good friends. Noticing her strange expression, Makoto asks if something is wrong or if she is simply hungry. Shimizuka-san looks at Makoto with a questioning expression and asks if he shouldn't try to make up with Seita-san. Makoto looks at Shimizuka-san with a cold and determined expression, bluntly stating that Anri is the only person who matters to him. Surprised and blushing, Shimizuka-san is left speechless by Makoto's firm words, admitting that she doesn't think so herself. A heavy, awkward silence lingers between Makoto and Shimizuka-san, both looking flustered and unsure of how to react. Finally, breaking the tension, Makoto quietly suggests that they should head home. Just as they are about to leave, Shimizuka-san breaks the silence, tentatively starting to say something to Makoto. Shimizuka-san begins to open up, confessing that she has been afraid of men since she was a child. She recalls Nikaido, a childhood friend who constantly messed with her and made her a fool of herself, leading to her general distrust of men. Makoto listens to her confession, his mind momentarily drifting to Anri. Shimizuka-san continues to open up to Makoto, explaining that Nikaido's rough personality was something she disliked. She reveals that despite her feelings, Nikaido continued to reach out to her, even after they finished junior high school. Shimizukasan continues to open up, admitting that despite her fear she felt Nikaido wants that bad. However, the other girls in her class didn't share her opinion. She then reveals a surprising detail. Nikaido already had a girlfriend, or rather, a fiancé. Shimizuka-san continues to recount how Nikaido persisted in talking to her. As she begins to mention the girls in her class, she becomes visibly distressed. Seeing this, Makoto interrupts her, telling her that it's enough and she doesn't need to say anything further. Shimizuka-san quietly accepts and stops speaking. Pomeco looks at Makoto with a blush on her cheeks, holding out her hand and softly telling him to go ahead and touch it. Pomeco gently takes Makoto's hand, revealing a vulnerable side of herself. She admits that the memories of her past often left her hands shaking in fear. She tells him that during their time together, whether they were writing or at the food court, she could finally find peace and forget her pain. However, she confesses that the moment she was alone, the shaking and the haunting recollections would always return. Makoto listens in silence, his expression solemn as he absorbs her confession. Pomeco smiles warmly, recalling the day of the fireworks. She tells Makoto that when she held his hand back then, she didn't shake at all, and she softly asks him to confirm that she isn't shaking anymore. Pomeco looks at Makoto and tells him that he has healed her heart. With a tender expression, she pulls him into a warm hug, declaring that it is now her turn to heal his. Pomeco leans her head against Makoto's shoulder, embracing him tightly. Makoto is caught off guard, his face turning bright red as he is overwhelmed by her affection. In a tender embrace, Makoto recalls the things he missed most: playing soccer with others, going on school trips, and spending time with his family and sister. Pomeco listens and acknowledges every word, until the most painful longing of all surfaces, the simple desire for someone to hold him. Tears stream down Makoto's face as he finally lets go of his emotional walls. He cries out, admitting that he thought the past didn't matter to him anymore. But it was a lie. He had simply been trying to ignore the pain all along. As Makoto continues to weep, Pomeco holds him tightly and softly reassures him, telling him that it's okay and that she will always be by his side. Overwhelmed by her kindness, Makoto realizes that he can no longer fool himself into believing the past doesn't hurt. Makoto and Pomeco lean in close, their faces just inches apart as they share a heavy emotional silence. As they gaze at one another, Makoto admits to himself that Henri is the person he holds most dear in the entire world. Pomeco looks at Makoto with a concerned expression, asking him what is wrong. Internally, Makoto acknowledges his true feelings, admitting that he is in love with Henri. However, with a peaceful smile on his face, he tells Pomeco that he feels as though he could write a beautiful love story. The scene shifts to a bustling urban center for a date after their meeting. Standing beneath towering skyscrapers, Makoto is overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the city, while Pomeco observes that many people are still wearing suits despite it being Saturday. As they walk amidst the towering skyscrapers, Makoto mentions that Seiko-san works for an amazing company. He admits that although he was familiar with the name of the major publishing firm, he was stunned by the actual size of the building. Pomeco agrees, recalling that she was equally surprised when she first came to the meeting. Pomeco reminds Makoto that they are here for his meeting today, and tells him that he should be more imposing. Makoto, looking somewhat drained, simply agrees with her. Pomeco looks at Makoto with a worried expression, reminding him to tell the receptionist his name. Makoto gives a small, confident smile and tells her that he can. Makoto looks at Pomeco and tells her is glad she followed him. Overwhelmed by her own nervousness for him, Pomeco frantically asks if he wants her to speak for him or even call her sister to come and help. However, when Makoto suddenly leans in close, Pomeco is caught off guard and becomes deeply embarrassed, stuttering that she has been in similar situations before. As they wait, Seiko-san finally appears, looking completely exhausted. She apologizes for keeping them waiting and for her tired appearance, admitting that she has been at the office since yesterday. Seiko-san gives a warm greeting to the two. Pomeco, noticing how tired Seiko-san looks, worries for her sister but still politely responds to the greeting. Makoto looks on as they exchange words. With a sudden burst of energy, Seiko-san invites them to follow her, exclaiming that they should have a fun meeting. She leads the way, explaining that her editorial office is just around the corner. As they walk, Seiko-san suddenly notices that Makoto and Pomeco are holding hands. She stops in her tracks, completely shocked and excited, exclaiming, "Oh my God, you're holding hands! Are you guys dating?" Blushing intensely and looking panicked, Pomeco frantically waves her hand as she shouts a denial, insisting to Seiko-san that she and Makoto are not together. Seiko-san reacts with surprise to Pomeco's denial, questioning if being distant while holding hands is the new trend. She playfully warns a flustered Pomeco that she will interrogate her about the details once they are at home. Finally, she leads them to the door, announcing that they have arrived. With a grand gesture and a bright smile, Saikosen proudly introduces the editorial office to Makoto and Pomeco, who look on as they take in the busy environment. Pomeco is absolutely thrilled to find out that her work is being turned into a comic book. She excitedly tells Makoto that she already owns all the books in the series and even has an anime announcement poster, vowing to buy the new comic on her way home. Makoto looks on, completely stunned by her overwhelming enthusiasm. Seiko-san looks around the office, commenting that the place is full of dreams. Pomeco turns to Makoto with a gentle smile, asking him if he feels happy being there. Seiko-san enthusiastically leads the way to the meeting rooms. Speaking about building a new dream, she tells Pomeco to wait in the room next door and wishes Makoto good luck as he prepares for his meeting. Seiko-san suddenly feels a wave of guilt for splitting the two apart, imagining them as a pair of newlyweds. She dramatically wonders if she has become the villain in their relationship and begs Pomeco to forgive her. Pomeco calls out to Seiko-san to hurry up and asks Makoto, referring to him as Nyanta-sensei, to wait for her as they proceed. The clock on the wall shows that it is now 10 o'clock. As the meeting officially comes to an end, Makoto lets out a sigh of relief. He admits that even though they are acquaintances, he still gets incredibly nervous whenever business is discussed. Seikosen remarks that the paperwork regarding royalties and contracts was boring, and suggests discussing the remaining details next time, to which Makoto agrees. As Makoto sips his coffee, Seikosen observes that he looks different, noting that he seems more sparkly than before. Seikosen suddenly makes a bold assumption, teasing Makoto by claiming he is in love with Henri. Makoto is caught completely off guard, his face flushing in sheer shock. Makoto is completely flustered, desperately trying to deny Seikosen's claim. However, Seikosen's already lost in her own thoughts, convinced that Makoto is the right person for her precious Henri because of his sincerity. While maintaining a smile, Seiko-san suddenly turns menacing, warning Makoto that she will kill him if he ever makes Henri cry. Terrified by her sudden shift in mood, Makoto can only stammer a frightened agreement. Seiko-san gives Makoto a playful smile, promising to keep his supposed feelings for Henri a secret. Makoto is internally panicking, trying to explain that they are really just friends, but Seiko-san simply brushes him off. He looks on in defeat, realizing that she isn't listening to a word he says. Seiko-san suddenly declares the meeting over, jokingly claiming that Henri would be mad at her for keeping him too long. As she makes her exit, she teases him by wishing him fun on his date, leaving Makoto completely flustered and repeating in a panic that it isn't a date. Seiko-san gives a playful smile, promising that Makoto will be very happy, and claiming she'll handle the adult matters to protect them. As she departs, Makoto is left in a daze, wondering to himself if his outing with Henri is truly a date. Just as Seiko-san leaves, Makoto is startled to see Henri standing there. She asks him if he did okay and if he understood the contract, jokingly wondering if he cried during the process. Makoto simply replies that he was fine. Henri smiles warmly, mentioning that Seiko-san is a very good editor. However, she quickly turns to Makoto with a slightly flustered expression, telling him that he should have just waited for her in the room they showed him. Henri becomes overly dramatic, clutching her chest in relief and telling Makoto how glad she is that nothing happened to him. She even admits that she was prepared to kick the door down if something had gone wrong, leaving Makoto slightly bewildered by her intensity. Makoto reaches out and takes Henri's hand, catching her by surprise. As they hold hands, Henri's expression softens into a warm, loving smile. With the meeting finally over, Henri beams with happiness and suggests they celebrate by going out for pancakes and karaoke. Makoto gives a simple, affirmative response, agreeing to the date. Makoto and Henri hold hands, ready to head out for their fun date. From the shadows, Eri peeks out, her expression filled with longing as she wishes she could go along. She calls out to her sister, reminding her to be home by nightfall and wishing her luck. With the work finally done, Makoto exhales deeply, admitting that he had been incredibly nervous throughout the process. Henri stands beside him with a gentle smile, as the tension of the meeting finally fades away. Walking through the bustling city, Makoto expresses his relief that everything worked out. Pomeco, beaming with excitement, agrees and tells him that they are going to have a great time, noting that the place her sister mentioned is just down the street. Pomeco is absolutely thrilled, her face glowing with happiness as she thinks about the pancakes and karaoke awaiting them. As they walk through the city, Pomeco is completely captivated by everything around her. She excitedly points out delicious-looking cream puffs, a cute outfit in a window, and shops for cosmetics and sweets. Makoto follows along, watching her genuine excitement with a gentle, amused smile. Makoto looks at the phone in shock, exclaiming that she is already almost at the store. Meanwhile, a Kurosawa Momo checks her own phone, mentioning that Paguko has reached out to her. Pomeco cheerfully asks where the pancake place is, making Makoto realize they've walked too far in the wrong direction. At the same time, Makoto is internally bothered by the messages he's receiving. questioning why everyone insists on calling their time together a date. Pomeco beams with joy as she holds Makoto's hand, telling him that just walking around with him makes all the stores look so nice. Makoto looks on, seemingly caught off guard by her open affection. Suddenly, a girl with short hair appears and waves energetically to catch their attention. Pomeco looks at her and recognizes her immediately, calling out, "Shizuka," while Makoto looks on in surprise. Pomeco throws herself into a hug, exclaiming how much she missed Sira. Sira smiles warmly and pats Pomeco's head, asking her how her studies are going and if she thinks she'll do well on her upcoming test. Pomeco modestly suggests that she will likely do better than average on her tests. When Sira asks if she has made any friends, Pomeco happily reveals that she has a male friend. At that moment, Makoto appears, and Pomeco greets him with a bright and energetic hello. Sira reacts with intense curiosity and excitement, her eyes wide as she questions if Pomeco's male friend is actually a boyfriend. While Makoto stands there with a neutral expression, Pomeco looks completely flustered by the sudden interrogation. Sarah suddenly hugs Pomeco tightly, abruptly shifting the mood by announcing she is starving and wants to head to a store. As she does, she tells Makoto not to embarrass Pomeco. While Makoto simply worries about Sarah's own aggressive nature, Pomeco is left completely flustered and overwhelmed by the sudden chaos. Yuri shyly greets Makoto, mentioning that it has been a while since they last saw each other. Sierra adds her greetings before suddenly deciding to head in a different direction, telling them the store is right in front of them and leaving the two of them alone. The group arrives at a store, featuring a sign that says, "Let's get along." As they step inside, a cheerful staff member greets them warmly, noting that there are three of them and guiding them further into the shop. As they are led inside, Pomeco becomes visibly anxious, admitting that she is not used to such fancy places. While the staff member tries to reassure her, Makoto and Yuri watch her flustered state with curiosity. As they look over the menu, Pomeco is dazzled by the numerous delicious options. She exclaims in excitement and confusion, completely overwhelmed by the variety of treats available. While Makoto and Yuri observe her reaction, Pomeco excitedly browses the menu, declaring that everything looks delicious except for the pancakes, and decides to go with a crepe instead. Makoto looks on in bewilderment, reminding her that they had actually come to the restaurant specifically for pancakes. Yuri quickly shuts Makoto down, leaving him speechless and intimidated. While Makoto decides to just have the pancakes, Pomeco is captivated by the Mont Blanc and pudding shown in the menu. With a bright, enthusiastic smile, she suggests a solution. Why don't they all just share everything? Makoto can only look on, bewildered by the idea. Looking at the menu, Makoto decides on a pancake. Pomeco chooses a crepe, and Yuri expresses her craving for a parfait. Yuri beams with joy, exclaiming how much fun she is having. Makoto looks on with a thoughtful expression, realizing that this is what it feels like to be with friends. Pomeco happily agrees, urging them to finally place their order. Makoto is deeply moved, thinking to himself that he never imagined he would one day share a sweet treat with friends. Beside him, Pomeco is full of energy, exclaiming with joy as she watches the staff bake crepes. Makoto then notices a plate nearby, mentioning that it seems to be Yuri's parfait. Pomeco is wide-eyed with excitement as she watches the chef set the crepes on fire. Yuri calmly explains that the technique is called flambeing, while Makoto looks on, happy to see them enjoying themselves. The desserts finally arrive at the table, looking absolutely exquisite. Makoto, Yuri, and Pomeco stare in awe at the sparkling treats, completely captivated by their beauty. Pomeco takes a bite of her parfait, her face lighting up with joy as she praises both its taste and beautiful appearance. Similarly, Yuri is completely amazed by the flavor of her crepe, admitting that she has never had one like it before. Makoto takes a bite of his pancakes, a slight blush on his cheeks as he is captivated by the taste. He realizes why pancakes are so popular, savoring the fluffy texture of the dessert. Pomeco enthusiastically holds out a bite of her dessert, urging Makoto to try it. Beside her, Yuri watches the interaction with a soft, pleased expression, as the three of them enjoy their time together. Makoto agrees to take a bite of the dessert Pomeco offered him. As he does, a poignant narration reflects on how they were once stuck in the past. As Makoto prepares to eat, a reflective narration recalls a time when trust was hard to find, and only a few close friends shared the simple joy of walking through town and eating together. Returning to the present, Pomeco beams with a bright, happy smile as she leans in to feed Makoto, playfully telling him to say "ah." Makoto is caught off guard and flustered as Pomeco feeds him, leading her to ask if he doesn't like it. Despite the embarrassment, Makoto is overwhelmed with a sense of happiness, feeling as though he could cry from the joy of the moment. Pomeco, though blushing and admitting that the situation is embarrassing, tells him that she doesn't mind. As the moment lingers, Makoto reflects on the events of the day, realizing that it was a day full of firsts. As they step outside the restaurant, Pomeco beams with happiness, exclaiming that the food was delicious. Yuri smiles, wishing she could have had even more, while Makoto calmly thanks them, concluding their wonderful meal together. Yuri tells the others that she is heading home, but she quickly changes her mind. Blushing slightly, she shyly invites Makoto and Pomeco to go sing karaoke together, catching them both off guard. Yuri shyly mentions that she had promised to study with a friend. Pomeco reacts with surprise, while Makoto asks if it is the guy friend she had mentioned earlier. Caught off guard by their reactions, Yuri can only laugh nervously. Beaming with happiness, Yuri waves goodbye, telling Makoto and Pomeco how grateful she is to have met them. As she makes her exit and promises to stay in touch, a sudden voice calls out, "Oh, wait!" Pomeco remarks that Yuri must have found some good friends, to which Makoto simply replies, "Good for you." Just then, a sharp skidding sound echoes as someone comes to a sudden halt right beside them. Pomeco playfully tells Yuri to have fun on her date. Caught off guard, Yuri becomes extremely flustered, her face flushing in embarrassment as she realizes her secret has been exposed. Makoto is caught off guard by Pomeco's sudden shift in mood with a playful and blushing expression. Pomeco suggests that the two of them go sing karaoke together. Pomeco nonchalantly sips her drink, her cheeks flushed, while Makoto stands beside her, looking completely bewildered by her bold move. As they settle in, Pomeco leans closer to Makoto and asks for his help in picking a song on the tablet, their proximity leaving them both flustered. Pomeco curiously asks Makoto what kind of songs he usually sings, noting that she has never seen him sing. Makoto hesitates, realizing that he has actually never done karaoke before, which leaves Pomeco completely stunned. Pomeco quickly apologizes, worried that she has reminded Makoto of something painful. However, Makoto's expression turns solemn as he reveals the truth. He has been to karaoke before, but only because he was tricked into it by others. Makoto reaches out and gently pats Pomeco's head. With a soft and sincere expression, he tells her that he is fine now that he has met her, leaving Pomeco surprised and blushing. Touched by Makoto's kindness and his admission that he is doing well because of her, Pomeco gazes at him with a soft, blushing expression and whispers a heartfelt, "Thank you." Pomeco looks at Makoto with a tender expression, confessing that she always feels happy whenever she is with him. Slightly flustered, Makoto wonders why she is saying this all of a sudden. But then he becomes honest about his own feelings. He admits that he was actually scared to come to karaoke, fearing it would bring back memories of his past and that he might end up bothering her. With a bright and relieved smile, Makoto tells Pomeco that everything is totally fine now, attributing his happiness and peace of mind to her presence. Pomeco looks away with a blush, her heart fluttering as she thinks about how much fun their date was today. She feels a deep sense of happiness just knowing that she was by Makoto's side. Beaming with happiness and a deep blush, Pomeco tells Makoto that she had so much fun as well, thanking him for the wonderful day. Makoto and Pomeco look at one another with gentle, blushing smiles, cherishing the mutual happiness and the deep emotional connection they have built. Makoto speaks calmly, but Pomeco's expression becomes slightly anxious, as she admits that she is more worried about getting the book into print. Pomeco places a comforting hand on Makoto's shoulder, reassuring him that everything will be fine and reminding him that she is his friend. With a warm, blushing smile, she promises that they will go look at the book together once it is officially published. Pomeco hesitates for a moment before shyly confessing that she is also writing a book. Makoto is caught completely off guard by the revelation, his expression one of pure shock. Makoto is completely taken aback by the news, exclaiming in disbelief. Pomeco softly responds, letting him know that it was thanks to him that she started writing. With a blissful expression and a deep blush, Pomeco closes her eyes and tells Makoto that she is finally able to enjoy writing novels again, attributing this change entirely to him. Makoto smiles gently, telling Pomeco that her progress actually due to her own hard work. He then curiously asks for the title of her novel, causing Pomeco to blush deeply in response. Still blushing and overwhelmed, Pomeco shyly tells Makoto that she will reveal the title of her novel later. Noticing her embarrassment, Makoto tries to lighten the mood by reminding her that they are there for karaoke and encourages her to start singing. Looking at the karaoke machine, Makoto asks what they should sing and suggests that Pomecoum he calls Anra should pick. When he questions why she won't tell him, Pomeco dismisses it as being just for fun while acting shy. Makoto looks at her with a puzzled expression as she starts to speak again. Makoto admits that he doesn't know much about singing. This sparks a sudden idea for Pomeco, who becomes excited. She suggests that instead of a song, Makoto should shout out what he wants to do from now on. Pomeco excitedly raises the microphone, declaring that since no one is listening and it's their special day, she's going to say it now. Makoto, caught off guard by her intensity, finds the whole situation incredibly embarrassing. Driven by Pomeco's high energy, Makoto finally gives in and shouts into the microphone, confessing that he wants to be with her every day. Both of them are left blushing deeply, overwhelmed by the sudden emotional outburst. Blushing intensely and filled with emotion, Makoto pours his heart out into the microphone. He shouts his dreams of seeing Pomeco's books on display and his wish to eat pancakes with her again, while Pomeco looks on, deeply touched by his sincerity. Following Makoto's heartfelt wishes, Pomeco finally reveals the title of her novel, The Most Important Person in the World. She leans in close to him, leaving Makoto completely overwhelmed and blushing, as she whispers that she was hoping for just one thing. The scene transitions to a bright morning at Pomeco's house. While waiting, Makoto speaks with Pomeco's mother, who apologizes for her daughter oversleeping, and reveals that Pomeco has been talking about Makoto constantly. Just then a beaming Pomeco appears, greeting him cheerfully as Mr. Nyanta. Blushing and smiling, Makoto tells the adults that a little tardiness isn't a bad thing, declaring that he is more than happy to wait for Pomeco until the end of the day. Watching him, Mina and another Mina exchange amused glances, clearly charmed by his devotion. Pomeco rushes into the room, breathless and apologetic as she calls out to Makoto. However, she quickly notices the amused expressions on the adults' faces and asks what they are looking at. One of the women warmly remarks that it's nice to be young, while the other playfully denies that anything is wrong. Overwhelmed by the knowing smiles of the adults, Pomeco's face turns bright red. In a panic, she grabs Makoto and urgently pulls him away, shouting for them to leave immediately. Makoto, caught off guard, can only let out a stunda as he is swept along by her haste. Pomeco leads Makoto away, mentioning something her sister told her. Unbeknownst to them, Sarah, Nanako, and Miyazaki Shizuka are watching from a distance, with the girls discussing whether Nanako's karaoke incident was simply a misunderstanding. Nanako lets out a soft gasp as she watches Makoto and Pomeco walk away. Miyazaki Shizuka tells her that she should talk to him, noting that he is not like them, which leaves Nanako feeling hesitant. Taking a deep breath, Nanako finally calls out to Makoto, addressing him as Oniasan. However, as soon as the words leave her mouth, she is overcome with hesitation, her expression turning anxious while Sira and Shizuka watch her attempt to bridge the gap. Makoto greets Haruka with a simple good morning, but then abruptly adds that he doesn't like rice cakes, leaving Haruka looking completely bewildered. Makoto addresses Minami and Kisaragi, earnestly asking them to take good care of his sister from now on. His expression turns solemn as he thinks to himself about what he truly wants his sister to know. Ari is overcome with emotion, tears welling up in her eyes as she realizes Makoto is finally calling her his sister. Meanwhile, Nanako tries to get Makoto's attention, struggling to express her own feelings as they walk through the neighborhood. Makoto gives a short, distant reply to Nanako, telling her he will talk to her later. As he departs with Pomeco, Nanako and her friends watch him go, with Nanako appearing stunned by his response. At school, Shin notices a change in Miyazaki Shizuka's appearance and comments that she got a haircut. Shizuka is slightly surprised, but greets him back as they exchange morning pleasantries. Miyazaki Shizuka softly responds to Shin, telling him that everything is okay, while Kurosawa Momo adds with a gentle smile that she is fine now. Shin gives a simple acknowledgement to the girls, telling them he understands. After bidding Miyazaki Shizuka farewell, he turns and walks away. Miyazaki Shizuka watches him leave, her face flushing as she touches her cheek, appearing deeply flustered. Kurosawa Momo brings up an upcoming team competition and asks Makoto if he can play baseball. As they converse, Makoto is transported back to his childhood, remembering when he used to play catch. Meanwhile, a few classmates watch them from a distance, completely bewildered by the friendly atmosphere between the two. Makoto calmly tells Momo that she doesn't need to use that tone of voice anymore. Meanwhile, Momo, blushing and flustered, snaps at the classmates who are staring at them in confusion. Kurosawa Momo is completely flustered, her face blushing as she struggles with her emotions. She tells herself that she has to do something, but she's simply too scared to talk. Sadison quietly thanks Shimizukasan. Nearby, Makoto can't help but let out a small laugh at how overwhelmed Kurosawa Momo has become. Momo looks on in utter confusion, completely baffled by the situation. A few months pass, and the scene shifts to a bustling city street, marking a new chapter in the story. Months have passed, and the cold of winter has set in. Makoto stands waiting, checking his phone with a look of resolve, thinking to himself that he has finally made up his mind. At that moment, Pomeco arrives, waving cheerfully as she apologizes for keeping him waiting. Looking at Pomeco, Makoto realizes that she has become more than just a dear friend to him, as she has always been the one there for him. As they stand before the bookstore, they both feel a mix of excitement and nervousness, wondering if their books are finally on the shelves. Pomeco looks at Makoto with a soft, blushing smile and reaches out her hand. Makoto takes it, and as their hands intertwine, he realizes he is experiencing a faint, new feeling for the first time. The scene focuses on the bookstore shelves, shimmering with a sense of wonder. Makoto is completely overwhelmed, feeling a surge of emotion so strong that it feels unreal. With a blush on his face and his heart racing, Makoto turns toward Pomeco. He softly asks if they can look at their work now, his voice filled with a mix of nervousness and excitement. With a blush on his face and a surge of excitement, Makoto looks at Pomeco and urgently tells her that it's time to see their work now. They finally find their books on the shelf. Standing side by side and blushing, Makoto and Pomeco are struck by a powerful, unfamiliar feeling that they cannot put into words. Pomeco softly remarks that their books are lined up next to each other, while Makoto looks on, deeply moved by the sight of their shared work. Pomeco giggles softly, her face flushed with joy. Beside her, Makoto beams with a peaceful, happy expression, thinking to himself that he had already noticed the special bond they share. On this memorable day, Makoto realizes that he is no longer trapped by the pain of his past. Having finally moved toward the future, he decides to tell the most important person in the world how he truly feels. Makoto gazes at Pomeco, thinking to himself that she is the most important person in the world to him. Pomeco, blushing with a shy smile, admits that she is still a little embarrassed about the title of their book. In that moment, Makoto softly calls out her name, Anri, as he gathers his courage to tell her how he feels. Makoto pours his heart out, declaring that Pomeco is his favorite person in the entire world. Overwhelmed by the confession, Pomeco looks at him with wide, shimmering eyes, her heart racing as she absorbs his words. Overwhelmed with emotion, Pomeco confesses her feelings back, telling Makoto that she loves him the most in the world too. Standing side by side, they finally overcome the shadows of their past, ready to embrace a new future together with the person they love.